Two guys in the dark.
Have you seen Bob? What about Lisa? I must say that to my cashiers at least 50 times a day. Now, you have to understand that Bob and Lisa are not real people. They're just acronyms, such as Bob stands for bottom of the basket, or Lisa, which means look inside always. Get it? Anyways, it's just something that companies do to make themselves sound cool, I guess. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The weirdest acronym that I've ever seen at a grocery store was DYFEYWLF. I saw it at one of those big name stores about a year ago. It took me a while to figure out what it meant, and I've been doing this for about 15 years. Anyways, I'm Candy, short for Candace. I'm the ACSSM here at Barnaby's. Anyways, it stands for Assistant Customer Service and Sales Manager, which means that I'm in charge of customer service, obviously, as well as all the cashiers, the office people, and any money, checks, WIC vouchers, and food stamp purchases that come through the registers. My friends call me Bubbles because of my happy and chipper disposition. It annoys some people, especially in the morning if they haven't had enough coffee yet. I'm more of an energy drink person myself. Anyways, it's not important. Now I'm sure you all know that Barnaby's is an old store. We don't have one of those cash counting machines, or a change weighing machine like the big name stores do. We have to count all the money by hand, then write it down on a log sheet, and file it away in a large filing cabinet in the office. Another one of my jobs, which I volunteered for, is employee relations. That means try to keep the employee as happy as possible. With all the horrible things that happen here, it's not very easy to do. Anyways, we offer a 10% discount on all the employee purchases, except tobacco and alcohol. We offer free coffee, and have Casual Friday every week, among other things. Most of the employees like wearing their own clothing to work, instead of this boring uniform. However, some customers have complained that all those ugly heavy metal t-shirts that Ricky wears every week, but that is a different story. You can't imagine all of the stupid questions that I get asked by customers. It's ridiculous. Anyways, the best part of my job is planning. Employee Appreciation Day, that is. You see, there's a carnival that comes to town for about a week, every summer, and uses the large field behind the store to set up shop. Pat lets them use the field for free, in exchange for allowing employees and their families to get in for free, and ride all the rides for free, with proper identification, of course. Everyone has a great time. Well, they did, until this past summer. It was mid-June, about 8 months ago. Pat brought in temps from the temp agency to cover the boost in sales that we were getting during this week. I was on call in case something major happened. It was a bright, sunny day, not a cloud in the sky. The carnival had rolled into town a few days earlier, complete with their food stands, kid rides, adult rides, game booths, a petting zoo, and various other carnival rides and animal attractions. This year, they had a huge Ferris wheel. This thing must have been about 400 feet tall. It was monstrous. I've never seen one that big. Anyways, it was about 2 in the afternoon. Everything was going great. People were smiling and laughing, just having a good time. Jim and his family were enjoying a funnel cake under the big oak tree. Marcus and his girlfriend were walking hand in hand down the midway. Stuart, Stephen, and Zeke were standing in line together to ride that pirate ship ride. Pat volunteered himself for that Dunk Your Boss game. He was soaking wet. It was hilarious. Reggie, the town sheriff, still hadn't stepped foot on the property. He was hanging out in his patrol car, eating donut. Milani and her girlfriend were chowing down on some chicken by the merry-go-round. Tommy and his girlfriend were enjoying an ice cream cone together. It looked like that scene from Lady and the Tramp. Ricky and one other regular customer were walking around with headphones, playing air guitar and drums. They looked pretty ridiculous. Ricky had that little chick that he found on a leash. It was waddling behind them. Various other employees were scattered around, enjoying the festivities. There were kids walking around with huge stuffed animals, young lovers holding hands, eating cotton candy, old folks sitting on benches, watching the crowd, while the carnival jingles and animal noises echoed in the background. It was magical. Anyways, I was in the merchandising booth. Pat, being the entrepreneur that he is, decided to have t-shirts, baseball caps, coffee cups, keychains, things of all sorts, printed up and sell them for $5 a shot. They said things like, "Barna, be careful. I survived Barnaby's," and "Barnaby's, shop till you drop." That was our biggest seller. People were buying these things left and right. We could hardly keep up. We did so well with it all that Pat decided to sell them in the store on a regular basis. As I said, everything was going great. Suddenly, all the animals started acting strangely, like they know something was going to happen. All the horses at the pony ride started jumping around and bucking the riders off of their backs. Then they took off, running through the field on a frenzy. One lady's foot got caught in the stirrups and was dragged about 50 yards. She was a bloody mess, but she was okay. The cows all laid down and began mooing wildly. The bulls began snorting like demons ready to strike. All the animals were just going crazy. It was disturbing. Everyone just stopped and stared at the barns. Suddenly we heard what sounded like a sonic boom. You know, the sound that planes make when it breaks the sound barrier. The vibration from the sound was so intense that it shook the ground violently, causing several people to fall onto the ground. Several tents and small buildings collapsed as well, crushing the people inside. Dust and debris was flying everywhere. The carnival workers tried desperately to stop the rides and remove the riders. The on-the-ground rides were somewhat successful, only a few injuries, but the off-the-ground rides weren't so lucky. As the wind blew harder, as I can only describe as the force of a tornado, the pirate ship ride was caught in a full swing and was ripped completely off its base and sent soaring into the sky. Screams of the passengers still haunt me in my sleep. It came crashing down on the ground, crushing and killing all the passengers aboard and injuring many people on the ground. People were running and screaming, heading to their cars or into the store. They were jumping over the injured people and bodies to save themselves. The wind was blowing so hard that it launched several people into the air and slammed into trees, carnival rides, and the back of the store. Lightning bolts began to hit the ground as the thunder roared. It never rained, though, which was odd. I hid behind an old propane tank connected to the building next door. Thank God I wasn't struck by lightning. Now that I think about it, there were no animals injured or killed during all of this. The wind never touched the barns or the petting zoo. All the animals were alive and accounted for, which was odd, but a good thing nonetheless. From my point of view, I could see that the midway was totally demolished. Bodies lay amongst the twisted metal and bloody stuffed animals. The merry-go-round began spinning extremely fast from the wind. It broke free from its axle and launched into the sky, soaring through the air like a frisbee. I heard they found it smashed into an old abandoned house out on Chestnut Street. The Ferris wheel began to sway back and forth. People in the top carriages began climbing down the wheel in an attempt to get to safety, but the attempt was useless. A lightning bolt was struck the base of the Ferris wheel, causing it to break free. The wind then pushed it over, came crashing down on the back of the store. The store had been damaged, and just like that, it was over. The wind stopped, the sky was clear again, the sun came out like nothing ever happened. I crawled out from behind the propane tank, took a look around. The carnage was devastating. I didn't look inside the store. People were bleeding, people were crying. I nearly broke down and cried myself. I pulled myself together and called 911. They said that they already had a few reports of what was going on. Ambulances and EMTs were on their way. I was walking around, helping people up. I noticed something really strange. There was no damage done to any of the surrounding buildings or property. Just Barnaby's. It was like the storm's full intention was to destroy this place. The ambulance and EMTs showed up shortly after and tended to the survivors. The cops showed up, except for Reggie, and taped off the property with yellow tape. The coroner showed up, gathered up all the bodies as well as the pieces, with the snow shovel-looking thing. Then they left. I heard later that the body count was in the hundreds. We lost 7 employees that day, as well as a few temps. After everyone had left, I was walking around, looking at all the damage. when I noticed Pat, down on his knees, staring at the damaged store and crying. That's the first time that I ever saw the man cry. I went to console him when out of the corner of my eye, I saw a little Native American boy standing at the edge of the property. I turned to face him. He bent down and tapped the ground 3 times, and then stood up, and then disappeared. I just walked away. Maybe now's not a good time, but I promised that I would tell you what that acronym meant at the beginning of the story. It stands for, Did you find everything that you were looking for? I drove by the store the very next day. I saw Pat out there boarding up the front window. On one of the boards was a sign that read, For Sale by Owner. A wave of emotion came over me. I pulled my car into an abandoned parking lot and just sat there, thinking about everything that has happened at that store. Some were good, some were bad, but it was always eventful. There was definitely never a dull moment. 2 weeks later, I drove by on my way to a job interview. I saw the front window boarded up, but I didn't see the for sale sign. However, I did see another sign on the front grass that read, Coming Soon, Cartwright Cinema. There's nothing in the dark that's not there in the light. That's what I always believed, until I bought that place. I never believed in ghosts, spirits, weird energies, or anything paranormal, but I do now. I'm Catherine Cartwright. I bought the property where a place called Barnaby's, an old grocery store, used to be, until a freak storm hit. I'm originally from Southern California. Friends call me Kitty Cat. Sometimes I make a purring sound when I breathe. It's a medical condition that I've had since I was younger. Anyways, that is not important. I moved here about 8 years ago. I used to work at my father's metal building company, but I've always had an interest in movies. I love movies, any kind of them, action, adventure, comedy, drama, you name it. I always wanted to own my own theater, so I moved out here to pursue that dream, and I did it. Anyways, I now own Cartwright Cinema. We're a small multiplex movie theater company. I own a small theater, a few towns over, and I was thinking of branching out. When I saw that property was up for sale, I thought it would be the perfect location for another theater. And it was the perfect location, but not the perfect property. Part of the agreement I made with Mr. Barnaby when we signed the contract was that if any weird or strange things happened, I would write it down and give it to him. When he asked me to do this, I thought, why not? Nothing's going to happen. That stuff's not real. I was wrong. Let me start from the very beginning. As I said earlier, I was thinking of branching out, so I grabbed my laptop one day and started to search properties for sale throughout the state. I came across that property as a result of a computer glitch. I started to type properties for sale, and before I could even get the word properties typed out, that listing had popped up. It was odd. I never even knew that place existed. The property was in a good location, the middle of town, high traffic area, and had an extremely low price. It was a developer's dream. Yes, the building was damaged, and the grounds were tore up, but since it was an old, all-brick building, it was nothing that a mason and a landscaping team couldn't fix. I called the realtor at the number that was listed in the ad and agreed to pay the asking price without even seeing the place first. Well, besides the pictures in the ad. That was definitely a bad idea. The realtor had called me back a couple of days later, said that the owner has accepted my offer, and asked if it was possible that we all met and signed the contract the very next day. I agreed. Actually, it's called a land contract. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's a contract that is drawn up, usually by a realtor or attorney, sometimes just between the buyer and the seller, that details agreements and conditions for purchasing a certain piece of property. Anyway, the next day it came. We all decided to meet up, at noon, at an old gas station in the next town over. I arrived first and went inside to get an energy drink. The cashier kind of creeped me out a little bit, so I got out of there as fast as I could. The realtor had arrived next, in his shiny new Cadillac Escalade. It must be nice. I'm still rolling around in a '98 Dodge Caravan. He said to call him Pat, but it's a respect issue, so I prefer to call him Mr. Barnaby. Anyways, He came rolling up in an old, bright purple short bus that he converted into his own personal RV. That thing was pretty cool, besides the color. It looked like a big Barney bus. I wonder if his color choice had anything to do with his last name. You know, Barnaby, Barney. He let me check it out after we signed the contract, and said that he was going to do some traveling, just to get away from everything. If I knew then what I knew now, I would have went with him. We discussed the conditions and agreements, made a few changes which included a 48-hour return clause, which meant that I would return the property to Mr. Barnaby within 48 hours of purchase if I chose to do so. It was his idea, because in his words, you have no idea what you're dealing with. I blew it off. We finally agreed on a contract, right there in the middle of the parking lot. The price never changed, though. We both signed the contract on the side of the bus. The realtor witnessed it. I gave him my cashier's check, and he gave me the deed to the property. The deal was done. The realtor had given us a copy of the contract, then got in his car and left. Mr. Barnaby and I talked for a little while. He's a really nice guy. Let me tell you about this bus. Not that it has any relevance to my story, but like I said, this thing was pretty cool. We talked for about half an hour as he explained everything that he has done to it. He has taken out all the seats, put plywood down as a floor, and then put a yellow carpet on top of that. He framed the whole interior with 2x4s, put insulation between the wood, and covered the walls and ceilings with drywall, and painted it mint green. That wouldn't have been my color of choice, but it's his bus. He left the windows and rear exit door exposed. He put a wall behind the driver's seat that went all the way across the bus, and put a house door, painted orange in the middle, leading into the back of the bus. He had red curtains on the windows, a gray futon bed, a long black dresser with a light blue coffee pot, a white microwave, and a little 13-inch brown television set with a VCR hooked to the top of it. A small black refrigerator on the side of that, and a small white potty chair in the corner. It's kind of gross, but whatever works for him. It looks like a box of crayons exploded in there. His power source was a power strip connected to a car battery, connected to the original battery. He said as long as he drove it for about half an hour a day, that would keep both the batteries charged enough to run everything for a while. Anyways, back to the story. After saying our goodbyes and changing cell phone numbers, in a friendly gesture, Mr. Barnaby hopped into his bus and headed south. I jumped in my van, headed north, and made a beeline for my new property. I was excited. I arrived at the address about 20 minutes later, and I must say, the picture in the ad must have been taken right after the storm happened, because it didn't look anything like that picture. It was far worse. The winter months had not been nice to that building. There was some sort of black fuzzy stuff growing on the side of it. The whole entire roof was caved in, as well as the top part of the building. There was no way to fix that place, I thought. I'm going to have to tear this whole place down. Now, for some strange reason, something told me to go inside. I don't know what it was, but I just felt that I had to. That was a decision that I would later regret. I opened up the door, which was still in pristine condition, which was very odd to me. I opened up the door and stepped inside. As soon as I did, it was like I stepped into a time capsule or something. The store was in full operation, fully intacted, and open for business. I stood there in shock. There were people in there shopping, employees everywhere. The roof was back on. The lights were on as well, as 80s top 40 hits played over the radio. It was business as usual. How could that possibly be? I don't know how long I stood there just watching. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, at the entrance to the hallway that led to the bathrooms. I only know this because of the sign hanging from the ceiling that said restrooms with an arrow pointed up. I saw an old Indian medicine man dancing around and chanting. I don't know what he was saying, but he started making a pushing motion with his arms in my direction. After each time he did this, he would slap the front of his thighs, and then did the pushing thing again. I'm starting to freak out at this point. He did this about 3 or 4 times, and then I suddenly began to feel lightheaded, really lightheaded, and eventually passed out. I woke up half submerged in this wretched smell, fungus-infested freezing cold water. I opened my eyes to see 5 Native Americans in a circle staring down at me. It looked like that Straight Outta Compton album cover, except with Indians. Yeah, I'm a huge Ice Cube fan. I have all his albums and seen all of his movies. But I must say, that day was not a good day. I closed my eyes and screamed as loud as I could. I opened my eyes once again, and they were gone. So were all the people, and a beautiful, pristine store. What the hell just happened? What the hell is going on here, I thought. I laid there on the floor, which was covered in about a foot of this nasty, wretched water, staring up at the sky because the roof was no longer there. I sat up to see the interior of the building totally demolished and falling down around me. Light fixtures hanging by their wires off of steel beams. Twisted chunks of metal laying in front of me, being only what I can assume were cash registers. Pieces of wooden shelving floating in the water. Cans and bags of all kinds of different product floating in the water as well. I felt something hit my right thigh. I looked down and saw a hand. I jumped to my feet, screamed like I was losing my mind as I ran out the door soaking wet. 2 boys that looked like they were about 12 or 13 were riding their bikes past the building as I came out screaming. They crashed into each other as they stared at me, running in my soaking wet t-shirt and jeans. I must have really given them quite a show. It was embarrassing. I hopped into my van, called Mr. Barnaby, and told him what happened, and that I was invoking the 48-hour clause. The deal is off. I wanted my money back, and he could keep that place. I swear I could hear the corner of his mouth rising up to form a smile as he nonchalantly said, "Okay, I thought you would." He agreed to meet me at the realtor's office the next day, where I handed him back the deed to the property. He gave me back my check. We shook hands, and I left. I was done with that place. I did honor that agreement about writing down anything weird and strange that happened, because I feel this story should be told. About 2 weeks later, curiosity got the best of me. I decided to make the drive back down there. I wanted to take a selfie with the place that changed my whole attitude about the paranormal. I'm no longer a skeptic. That stuff is real. I drove down there, stood on the sidewalk across the street with my back to the building. I pulled out my cell phone from my pocket, turned on my camera app, reversed the camera app, reversed the camera shot, and took a picture of me with the dilapidated building in the background. I put my phone back in my pocket, hopped in my van, and drove home. After about 2 hours, I finally got the nerve to look at that picture. What I saw terrified me to the point of tears. Yes, it was a picture of me with the building in the background, but on the grass surrounding it were transparent images of Native Americans. They were everywhere. I deleted that picture from my phone. That was about 6 months ago. Today, right before I started writing this, I received a call from Mr. Barnaby. We talk every now and then. He said that someone made him an offer that he couldn't refuse, and that he wanted to invite me to the re-grand opening of Barnaby's happening next week. Who knows? Maybe I will go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Barnaby's is proud to present, from us to you, the one, the only, Santa Claus. That's right, Santa Claus will be here at Barnaby's December 21st through the 24th from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. So stop on by and visit Santa's little workshop located in the field behind the store and take home your free, that's right, free picture of your child or yourself with Santa Claus. Bring yourselves, bring your kids, bring your letters, bring your lists. As always, we thank you for shopping at Barnaby's. Have a safe holiday. What's up, y'all? I'm Daryl. I work frozen foods here at Barnaby's. I've been here almost a year now. I got hired on the same day that Lady's necklace got caught in the conveyor belt. I'm also part of SPLAT. It's something that Pat came up with. Stands for Sales and Promotions Live Announcement Team. There are 3 of us on the team. Mike, the grocery manager, Ricky from the dairy department, and myself, since we're all comfortable speaking on the microphone. Here's how it works. Every day that one of us is scheduled to work, we have to take turns standing up at the front of the store, make announcements every 15 minutes for any products that are on sale that week, or any special promotions that are going on within the store. Now Barnaby's is an old store, as I'm sure you all know. We don't have one of those big fancy PA systems like the big name stores do. We have to stand up front, by the registers, with a megaphone and make our announcement that way. It scares the little kids sometimes. Anyways, I used to live in New York City. I moved out there about 10 years ago and tried to make it as a rap artist. But no one wants to hear an old school rapper like me nowadays. It's all the gangster crap. Anyways, the other day, I was sitting in my car on break, listening to Bring the Noise by Anthrax and Public Enemy. I love that song. I like it better than the original. For those of you that have no idea what I'm talking about, back in 1991, the heavy metal band Anthrax got together with the rap group Public Enemy and did a rap metal version of the Public Enemy song Bring the Noise. It was monumental. It opened up a whole new genre of music for bands like Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, and many others. Anyways, Ricky apparently heard me playing that song. He came over and started stomping in place and headbanging, screaming, "Not, not," right in front of my car. I was just looking at him like he was nuts. What the hell is this fool doing, I thought. I got out of my car, it was mid-December, freezing my butt off, and yelled, "Ricky! Ricky, stop! What the hell are you doing?" "Man, I love Anthrax," he said. "My band covers some of their songs in our set. Play it again, man." "Okay," I said, "but don't do that anymore. It's scary. Get in the car. It's cold out here." He got in, started talking as the song plays, and comes to find out, he plays guitar in a heavy metal cover band. I told him that I was a rapper, and he suggested that I meet the band, and said that we should do our own rap metal song, and make it about Barnaby's. "I'm down with that," I said. I just started writing my rap part of the song. You want to hear it? Okay, it goes a little something like this. B to the A, R, N, A, to the B, to the Y. My friend, we're Barnaby's grocery store. You'll pay less and get a whole lot more. You never know what's going to happen. That's what makes it so exciting, you know? What you say about us being haunted, cursed, and all that stuff? Well, it's true. But what you gonna do? We're the only store in town, and you gotta have food. That's all I got so far. It's kinda whack, and it's a work in progress. Anyways, enough about me. On with my story. Now, Pat is big on Christmas. And when I say big, I mean really, really big. Last year, and every year before, so I've heard, he would dress up like Santa Claus and hand out candy canes. Take pictures with the kids and their parents in his little workshop out back. He also made everyone that worked here at the time dress up like elves, complete with the hat, red and white striped leggings, the vest, and little bell booties. Well, except for Catherine, the assistant manager. She dressed up like Mrs. Claus. Yeah, those two are like pencil and paper, if you know what I mean. They try to keep it on the down low, but it's obvious to everyone. Now, not everyone looks good in an elf suit. I, for one, look like Homie the elf, and Homie don't play that. But a job's a job, and Pat pays me bank, so I did what I had to do. On the other hand, some people look really, really good in an elf suit, like Lily, the Native American woman that runs that memorial place out back. Yeah, I'd like to find her under my Christmas tree. Pat had to have been collecting Christmas decorations since the 1940s or something. It was off the hook, how much stuff that he had. Plastic Santa Clauses, giant nutcrackers, blow-up reindeers on the roof, icicle lights, you name it. He had 25 different Christmas trees, all with different colored lights and ornaments, among many other things. If you named it, he probably had it. There was stuff everywhere, outside and inside the store. There were wreaths hanging from the ceiling, garland draped all over the registers, and Christmas bows on all the shopping carts. It was nuts. One of the former employees, named Jimmy, who worked at the ASPCA, he knew a guy that ran a reindeer farm. He brought down 8 tiny reindeer and a little guy with a plastic red nose for the kids to pet and take pictures with. They were set up in a fenced-in area next to the workshop, and they also slept there at night. Jimmy slept with them. Now, I'm an animal lover myself, but that guy is on a whole new level. There was even a huge life-size nativity scene on the other side of the workshop. After all, that is the real reason for the season. Pat would start the day after Thanksgiving, and spent the next month setting it all up. He kept it all in 4 huge storage units down the street. That's how much stuff he had. He asked for volunteers, but most people would volunteer before he even asked. Some people from town volunteered as well. I helped decorate the inside of the store. The reindeers really creeped me out. They kept looking at me funny, like I was their dinner or something. Homie gotta go, I said to myself. I did find out later that reindeers love fruitcake. Pat and the crew spent every day and night putting it all together in time for the big reveal. You could see the statues and decorations in the daytime, but wouldn't see the inflatables or the lights until then. Anyways, he had several of these artificial snow-making machines for the first time last year. He said that he found them on the curb in someone's trash. He fixed them up and put them on top of the roof, pointing different directions so that it would snow when the lights came on. There were wires and extension cords running everywhere, all connected to this huge industrial-sized surge protector with a long red and green striped handle with a plastic snowball on top, which was plugged into an outside electric socket. Now the rest of the Splat team and I spent the entire month of December making announcements that the official lighting of Barnaby's would be December 23rd at 8 p.m. Everyone was excited. Anyways, reveal day came. Many customers, people from town, as well as the neighboring towns showed up for the event. It was mandatory for all of Barnaby's employees to be there in our elf suits. So I was, along with everyone else. There were husbands and wives, boyfriends and girlfriends, girlfriends and girlfriends, and boyfriends and boyfriends. A lot of people even brought their dogs, dressed as reindeers, no less. And there were kids everywhere. So many people showed up that Reggie, the town sheriff, had to block off the entire street. There were people standing in the road, on the grass of neighboring buildings, on the roof of their cars, and hanging out the windows. It was insane. Candy was selling coffee and hot chocolate and little Barnaby's coffee cups for $5 a shot, as well as Barnaby's hats, gloves, and scarf sets for $7 a shot. Ricky and his band were playing Christmas songs on the back of a flatbed semi-truck. Lily was handing out the plastic candy canes that read, Miwi Kawadamus. That's Cherokee for Merry Christmas, by the way. People were singing along, holding their lighters in the air, and having a great time. I hadn't seen anything like that since the one time that I spent at Times Square to watch the ball drop on New Year's Eve. 8 o'clock came. Mr. and Mrs. Claus came out of the front door of the store. Santa quieted everyone down using the megaphone. Band stopped playing, and a hush fell over the crowd. Mrs. Claus and I would like to thank each and every one of you for showing up here tonight, he continued. We especially want to thank all the wonderful volunteers who helped make tonight happen. We hope you like it. Are you ready, Mrs. Claus, he asked. Ready, Santa, she replied. 10, 9, he started. The crowd joined in around 7. The drummer then joined on beat as everyone continued 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mrs. Claus then pulled the handle. So I had to make another announcement. Attention Barnaby shoppers, let me ask you something. Everyone knows to leave milk and cookies for Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. But what about Rudolph and the rest of the gang? I'm sure that they'll be hungry too. Now you may ask yourself, what do reindeers eat? Well, here at Barnaby's, we have the answer. It's corn. No, not the 90s rock band corn. That won't taste any good. It's fresh, delicious, wholesome corn on the cob. That's right. Right now in our produce department, you can take home 5 ears of corn for just $1. That's right. Not 3, not 4, but 5 ears of corn for just $1. Man, you can't even buy a decent cup of coffee for $1 anymore. Stop on by, pick yours up today, and make Rudolph and the rest of the gang very happy. Or they just might leave some unwanted presents on your front lawn, and you don't want that. I'm going to go get mine right now. I'll see you over there. As always, we thank you for shopping at Barnaby's. Have a safe and happy holiday. Okay, now that that's over with, I'm back to the story. Anyways, Mrs. Claus pulled the handle. Barnaby's lit up so bright that I swear that you could see it from space. People began shielding their eyes from the light. It was that bright. Seconds later, they removed their hands from their eyes and started clapping and chanting. Merry Christmas, everyone, Santa said. The crowd began pointing and smiling at all the different decorations as they began filtering into the property. Amazed at the sights, and the snow machines created snow that filled the air. There were blinking multicolored lights boarding the entire building as well. The doors and windows, even the candy cane fence. the reindeer pen, and the nativity scene. A giant blow-up Santa and reindeer team on the roof. Mechanical snowmen, various size decoration Christmas trees, and even a film projector showing the claymation classics on the west side of all the buildings. Among many other things, Ricky and the band began playing more Christmas songs as Santa and Mrs. Claus began mingling with the crowd. It was quite a presentation. I was impressed, and I don't impress easily. Anyways, everything was going great, until suddenly, several loud bangs were heard, one right after the other, hushing the crowd and stopping everyone in their tracks. Thick black smoke and spark began to pour out of the snow machines as they began to shake and shoot large chunks of ice directly into the crowd. People began running for their lives and screaming. Ricky and the band hopped in the cab of the truck to take some cover. Jimmy let the reindeer out of the pen. Candy hid behind the empty propane tank at the back of the building next door. I hid behind Pat's big Barney bus and peeked my head around to see what was going on. Several people got hit in the head and face with ice chunks, causing them to fall on the ground. As the crowd trampled over them, blood pouring from everybody's skulls. Several teenagers grabbed the large candy canes and began to play baseball, hitting the ice chunks in all different directions. What the hell is wrong with these people, I thought. The baseball game was short-lived, though, as the speed of the chunks rapidly increased and took over the players. They quickly ran for cover. Just then, every single snow machine exploded, at the same time, shooting large pieces of burning hot metal and flames into the air. The pieces came soaring through the sky, like frisbees on speed, slicing, cutting, and severing people's arms. Mangled bodies, several body parts, and blood was everywhere. One guy got hit directly between the eyes, cutting halfway through his skull. Looked like something out of a punk rock concert. It was all very disgusting. Anyways, the flames caught the blow-up Santa on fire, as well as all the other decorations on the roof. I started yelling, "The roof! The roof! The roof is on fire!" You know the rest. Well, maybe you don't. Anyways, the decoration began falling from the roof, landing on the ones on the ground, catching them on fire as well. The fire spread quickly until every decorating ornament and tree was engulfed in flames. The smell of everything made you want to puke, and some people did. The smell of burning plastic is a smell that you will never forget. Anyways, the fire consumed everything. Except for the nativity scene. The fire seemed to go completely around it. Like it was protected by an invisible shield or something. Or maybe it was. Someone somewhere must have called the fire department as they showed up to put out the fire before it could reach the woods out back. It took them about 45 minutes to do so. The police arrived to help control the crowd, take statements, and send everyone home. The ambulances arrived and tended to the injured, and the coroner came to remove people. Thankfully, all the employees, Mr. and Mrs. Claus, and all the reindeer were accounted for. They had to get a large crane from the construction site down the road, and a large animal harness from the neighboring farm to get the reindeer. Ricky and the band climbed out of the cab of the truck and stared at all of the damage. Ricky screamed out, "Rock and roll!" Everyone just stared at him as he slowly walked away. Candy climbed out from under the propane tank, found Lily, and they just left. Jimmy ran back from the woods and helped them remove the reindeer. I went to the bar in my elf suit and had a drink. I'm lying, I had lots of drinks. Anyways, the following morning, Christmas Eve, Pat, Catherine, Candy, Ricky, Lily, and myself, as well as many other employees and town people, came to the store to access the damage and clean up the mess. Pat just stood there in shock, mumbling to himself. I felt kind of bad for him. We all gave him a group hug, and that brought him back to his senses. Now, to everyone's surprise, except for Pat's, the store was fully intact. Everything except for the doors and windows. The inside of the store was, for the most part, untouched. Pat then explained that the reason he decided to leave the store, an all-brick building with a flame-retardant roof and flame-resistant siding on Lily's memorial room. Bricks don't burn. We replaced the windows and the doors in no time. Thanks to Bob from the hardware store down the street. He came in on Christmas Eve to help out with any supplies that were needed. We cleaned up the trash and debris around the property, put it all in heavy-duty trash bags, tossed it in the dumpster next door with the permission, of course. Pat then sent everyone home to spend time with their families and then reopened the store December 26th at 7 a.m. This year, several employees, including myself, many of the townspeople gave some of the Christmas decorations to Pat to help rebuild his collection. It's nowhere near what he used to have, but you have to start somewhere. There is no death, only a change of worlds. That's an old Native American quote that my grandmother taught me back when I was a child. I don't remember who said it, but that's what got me interested in ghosts, spirits, and things of that sort. My grandmother, on my mother's side, is a very spiritual woman, always holding seances, talking with the spirits, burning candles, things like that. I learned most of what I know about the spirit world from her. She just turned 92 years old and has more energy than most 20-year-olds that I know. That scares me sometimes. Anyways, my name is Lily, and yes, I'm Native American, half Cherokee on my father's side. My father, David, is 100% full-blooded Native American. My mother, Shannon, is 100% full-blooded African American. It's a family joke. It's okay if you don't get that. Anyways, I also have a brother, Somas, meaning Thomas in English. He's a few years older than me, 6 to be exact. He chose to stay and live on the reservation along with my parents, about an hour away from where I live now. He's a deputy on the reservation police force. They have a saying, what happens on the res stays on the res. And they mean it. The laws are different there. Now, for those of you that don't know what a reservation is, it's a piece of land managed by recognized Native American tribes, such as Cherokee, rather than being managed by the state for which it's located in. There are about 326 reservations in the United States, give or take, mostly located in the western part of the country. The reservation that I am from is a Cherokee reservation. Anyways, when I turned 18, I'm now 32, I decided that I wanted to see what life was like off the reservation, so I went to my parents and asked their permission to leave and live on my own. They agreed under one condition. I do not leave the state. That seemed kind of odd, but it's a fairly big state, so okay. I agreed to that. I'd been saving my tips and wages working as a waitress at the Red Horse Bar. That's a bar on the reservation. Since I happen to be 18, I'm sure there's a lot of people who would think that there's no way that I could work at a bar. But since it was on a reservation and not governed by the state, the drinking age was 16, which allowed me to work there. I had a pretty good amount saved up, so I packed up what little belongings I had and moved out. I had to quit my job since I was moving off the reservation. Therefore, I could not work there anymore. Reservation laws say if you don't live there, you can't work there. My brother had given me a ride. We drove for a little while till I saw a sign that said room for rent. He stopped. I got out to speak to the homeowner. I rented a small basement apartment from a nice lady named Candy, and I lived there ever since. You remember Candy, right? She has a very friendly and big dog named Buster. Candy and I get along great. When I first moved in, she knew that I was looking for a job and offered me a cashier position at the grocery store that she worked at. Well, when it opened back up, that is. Some people called it Barnaby's. Apparently, they had a sewer pipe break a while ago, and the whole place had to be gutted. I gladly accepted the job. She said that they just had it finished and that it would be open in about a month or so. She also said that I would have to meet the owner, Pat, as he likes to meet all the new hires personally. She called Pat and set up a meeting for the next day at 1 p.m. That meeting would change my life and Barnaby's forever. The next day came. I got up, showered, got dressed in a nice pair of jeans and a blouse, ready to meet Pat. Candy was sitting on her computer, wearing a pair of leggings with smiley faces on them and a white t-shirt that said Operation Insomnia on it. I asked her what it meant, and she spent the next 20 minutes explaining to me what it was. It happens to be a YouTube narration channel, where the guy reads all kinds of creepy and crazy stories. She let me listen to a couple of stories before we left. They were pretty amazing. I ordered my t-shirt right then and there on the spot. I'm wearing it now. We hopped in her van, as I didn't have a car yet, and made our way to the store. I asked Candy if we could stop at the coffee shop across the street from the store for some coffee. Real coffee. Not that mocha, choca, frappa, kappa crap. Actual brewed coffee. I told her that I'd buy, and she agreed. Candy got an energy drink, and I got an extra large black coffee. You see, growing up on the reservation, we really couldn't afford such luxuries as cream and sugar, so I learned to drink black. The cashier really creeped me out. She had these really weird-looking green eyes. We got our drinks and got the heck out of there. We arrived at the store shortly after. Now, Candy was not kidding when she said that Barnaby's is an old store. It's a decent size, all-brick building. There's no big glass picture window in the front of the store like the big-name stores have. There are what look like 2 house windows on either side of a wooden door, painted white with the paint peeling off. There are no other windows in the whole place. However, there is a rather large room off the back of the store with its own entrance door. You can tell that it's an add-on, as it has aluminum siding rather than being brick. As we walked inside, the air was thick and heavy. I could tell something was going on there. An older gentleman walked up to Candy and gave her a hug. They talked for a few minutes about how everything was going with the store. I overheard him say that one of their regular customers, a man named Donovan, apparently he works for the governor of the state, and he convinced him to declare Barnaby's a historical landmark because of its history and all. Therefore, it would never be torn down. Barnaby's will live forever, I heard him say. He also said that the state pitched in the rest of the money that it would take to complete the renovations. A loud bang was then heard throughout the store. Candy, the man, and everyone else turned to look in the direction of the sound. Not again, I heard him whisper to himself. Suddenly, one of the guys up on a scaffold, doing drywall, yelled out, "It's okay, everyone. I dropped my drill. Nothing to worry about." Everyone sighed in relief. I just stood there, completely confused. Candy then introduced me to the man. "Lily, this is Pat. Pat, Lily." He extended his hand as a greeting. I extended mine to meet his. As my hand touched his, I suddenly became very lightheaded and dizzy. I started to hear various war cries of Native Americans preparing for battle, all at the same time. It was like they were trying to tell me something. I quickly pulled my hand back, covered my ears to drown out the noise, dropping my coffee in the process. I began to shake and thrust my head all around, my long hair hitting Pat and Candy directly in the face. I began screaming like a lunatic as I ran out of the store. Once outside, the voices stopped. I put my hands down on my side, turned, and gave a what the fuck stare at the building. Both Candy and Pat were running to my side, asking if I was okay. Shaken and a little distraught, I asked Pat if anything weird ever happened here, and if he knew anything about this land. He laughed. "You're not going to believe it." He then invited Candy and I to have a seat in his bus so that we could talk. That was the craziest looking thing that I've ever seen in my life. Candy and I sat on a futon while Pat stood in the doorway. He proceeded to tell me about every single thing that happened here, as much as he could remember, that is. The chicken fryer incident, the freak storm, black shadows, something to do with a Pepsi truck, and many other things. He also said that he had a ghost hunting team investigate the store about 6 months ago. He's still waiting to find out what happened. Then top it all off, he told me this place is built on an Indian burial ground. I was in shock. I was horrified. Indian burial ground, I thought to myself. Do you know how disrespectful that is? I was furious. I contemplated walking out right then and there. But a job's a job, and I really needed one. I thought of my grandmother, and that quote that she taught me many years ago. I decided that I may be able to help. I told Pat that I wasn't too happy with the store being built on an Indian burial ground, given the fact that I'm Native American. He apologized, saying that he didn't know. I accepted his apology and asked if it would be all right if I contacted my grandmother and asked her to come to the property and perform a seance to hopefully figure out why the spirits are so restless, besides the obvious, of course. He smiled and graciously said yes. I contacted my grandmother and told her what was happening. She agreed to hold the seance the next Friday. Friday came. Candy and I drove to pick up my grandmother. My grandmother explained, as I loaded her equipment into the van, that she didn't know if the seance would work, given the language barrier, but she was willing to give it a try. This would be interesting, I thought. We arrived back at the store, about 11 p.m. Pat was already there. My brother showed up, unannounced, and offered to join us as a translator, as he is fluent in English and Cherokee. My father taught him when he was younger. How he knew about what we were doing, I really don't know, but he did. So we unloaded the van, set up in the field behind the store. We set up the table first. It was round and had strange writings in it. So did the chairs. It was really creepy. We used the security light on the back of the store so that we could see. My grandmother then put a homemade loaf of bread in the center of the table. I'm really not sure why. She then surrounded the bread with 3 white candles, forming a perfect triangle, and then lit them. She said that the spirit's world is cold. The heat from the candles will help draw the spirits closer, as the spirits will seek out warmth from the flames. She also instructed us to turn off our cell phones to avoid distractions. Then she explained our duties for the seance. She said that she will act as the medium, meaning that she will invite the spirits to come join us and allow them to communicate through her, if they choose to. She will also be one to close the session when it's completed. My brother, as I said earlier, will translate the answers, if there are any. Also read a list of questions, in Cherokee, that we wrote down earlier in English. Candy, Pat, and I were there for witnesses. We all joined hands around the table and began. My grandmother began saying by, "O great spirits that inhabit this land, we invite you to join us tonight. We offer you the gift of heat from these candles that sit before us. We offer you this bread to nourish your hunger for this world. Please come and speak to us." As she finished her invite, the wind suddenly stopped blowing. The crickets stopped chirping, and the air began cold and heavy. After a few moments, she repeated her invite once again. This time, the flames from all around the candles burst up about an inch, like a flamethrower when you squeeze and release the trigger. Then they went back to normal. Candy screamed and began to shake. "They're here. Be quiet," my grandmother said. "Ask the first question." My brother asked, "How long have you been here?" Suddenly, we heard rustling in the trees. We all turned our heads to look. The wind started blowing again, hard. So hard that it thrusted our heads all the way around. We were all fighting to stay upright. Somehow the candles stayed lit, but the list of questions blew away. Through the whistling of the wind, we heard a disembodied voice saying, "Many moonis." "Many moons," my brother said. "That means many moons." Candy began to cry at this point. "I can't do this. I'm scared," she whined. "Calm down," my grandmother had told her. "We're safe as long as we hold the circle." She was wrong. Suddenly an enormous gust of wind came through, blowing Pat's toupee completely off his head, blowing the candles out, then picking the table up and slamming it directly into Pat's and my brother's faces, knocking them backwards out of their chairs, and pulling Candy, my grandmother, and myself out of our chairs and directly on top of them. Blood was gushing out of Pat's nose like a water faucet as he laid there unconscious. My brother's head was bleeding as well. He was awake and moaning. "Do not break the circle," my grandmother had yelled to us. The tables and chairs that were laying on the ground began to levitate in the air. They took flight, slammed hard into the back of the store and the security light, causing it to explode. Sparks had went everywhere. We were now in total darkness. Candy was screaming at the top of her lungs. "Shut up," I yelled at her. She finally stopped and began whimpering like a wounded animal. Just then, a dim yellow light began to rise from the ground through the grass, covering the entire field and the 5 of us as well. The sound of tom-tom drums began echoing through the night, getting louder as each second had passed. The ground started to shake, and transparent images of Native Americans began to rise from the ground. There were men, women, and children, slowly rising from the dirt and grass. I got the feeling like I just walked through a spider web, as I actually watched a spirit rise directly through my body. I watched as they rose through all of us. I'll never forget that moment for as long as I live. My grandmother then screamed, louder than I have ever heard her scream. "What do you want?" My brother mumbled the translation. Just as he finished his sentence, everything stopped. No more wind, no more drums, no more spirits rising on the ground. They were all standing around us now. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. Suddenly we heard another several disembodied voices saying, "Weswagetty," over and over at the same time. My brother began mumbling something that sounded like a word, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. "What, Somas? I can't understand you." He took a deep breath and said it once again. "Respect. They want respect," he said in a groggy voice. My mother then said, "I close the circle of communication, and thank you all for joining us tonight. You guys may now break the circle." I immediately grabbed my phone out of my pocket, turned on the flashlight, and went to go check on Pat. I shook him a couple of times, and he woke up, completely unaware of the events that happened. Dazed and confused, he sat up slowly. The blood caked to his face. My grandmother and my brother both sat up and said that they were okay. Candy, however, was lying in the fetal position, crying and shaking uncontrollably. I called 911 and said that there had been an accident and to send an ambulance. They arrived and attended to Pat. They called a second ambulance for Candy. They gave Candy a mild sedative, loaded her in the back of the ambulance, and took her to the hospital for an overnight stay. She was released the following morning. Pat, however, was treated for severe head trauma, taken to the hospital, and stayed there for a week and a half. He said that he got a couple of nurses' phone numbers, the dirty old man that he is. Anyways, my brother had to drive my grandmother and I back home. I picked up her van a few days later. Once Pat got out of the hospital, I called him and told him exactly what happened that night. I also asked if it would be possible to use that room off the back of the store as a memorial or tribute to the Native American community, for which I would have full control over. He graciously agreed. I contacted several people from my old reservation about donating items to the memorial: books, old Indian arrowheads, clothing, things of that sort. The response was overwhelming. I got a ton of stuff. They finally finished the store, as well as my memorial, and the store opened back up soon after. The activity had died down a lot, or so I've heard. You still see an occasional sighting or two around the store, but nothing too serious. I got my room organized. My mom helped me decorate, and I opened up soon after that. I hired one of the waitresses from the bar that I used to work at to cover the night shifts. She's a friend of mine, so that worked out well. My father, my brother, and several other people from the reservation often make random trips here to donate their time, taking pictures or answering questions that anyone might have. By the way, we never did find Pat's toupee. I can fix it. I can fix anything, even if I can't. That's what I tell myself, and everyone else. As a matter of fact. Anyways, I'm Bill. I'm the maintenance guy here at Barnaby's. I used to be a fire marshal a few towns over, but I reassigned shortly after investigating a fire that happened here years ago, 2 days before Christmas. But well, you get the idea. I became totally obsessed with this place after that. I would purposely drive out of my way on my way back to work just to drive by here. On my days off, I would park my car in the parking lot of the bank across the street and just stare at this building for hours. I'd even dream about it at night. It was really bizarre. Anyways, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a professional dance skater. You know, like the people you see in old school rap videos from the 70s, or in street corners dancing on the roller skates. Yeah, I wanted to do that for a living. But sometimes life has other plans for you. Now I just hang out at the local roller rink every single weekend, Monday and Tuesday nights, as well as Friday nights. The music nowadays kind of sucks, but at least you can dance to it, kind of. Anyways, let me tell you something. I decided to stop by the store one day for some Band-Aids, gauze pads, and peroxide. Some say I'm accident prone. I don't really see it though. I talked to Pat, the owner, and he said that he was looking for a maintenance guy. I thought, here's my opportunity. As I'm fully trained in plumbing and electrical. Yeah, right, I have no idea what I'm doing. I just wing it most days. Don't tell Pat though. Pat agreed to hire me on, and I reassigned from the fire marshal position the same day. It's a lot less money, but there's something about this place. It's like I belong here. Now, as the maintenance guy, I'm responsible for making sure all the cooler cases, lighting units, roll-up doors, deli slicers, ovens, and fryers, among many other things, are all in working condition. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. What about that chicken fryer incident? That was not my fault. If that guy hadn't have accidentally dropped a fountain drink full of ice into the fryer when it was being turned off, that would not have happened. Milani didn't tell you that in her story, now did she? What was he doing with a fountain drink by the fryer in the first place? We're not allowed to eat or drink in the prep areas. Anyways, I'm not supposed to mess with the heating units, the air conditioning systems, or the ventilation systems because I'm not HVAC certified, but that doesn't stop me. I like to push a few buttons every now and then, just to see what happens. Now, just in case you don't know what HVAC stands for. Wait a minute. I didn't even know what it stands for. Give me a moment, I'll look it up. Okay, I got it. It stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Apparently you have to be trained to work on those things. Yeah, right. I ain't got time for all that. We don't have one of those nice, fancy, digital, temperature-controlled water heaters like the big-name stores do. We still have a boiler. That's right, a boiler. In the basement. Yes, there's a basement, too. It's not a full-size basement, though. More like a 10 to 20-foot room below the store. The entrance to the basement is between both bathroom doors, by the cash office, at the front of the store. Now, just in case you don't know the difference between a water heater and a boiler, we're going to have to look it up yourselves. I got a story to tell you. Now the basement is off limits to the normal employees, but not me. I've never been normal, and I like it that way. But seriously, only Pat, myself, and the HVAC guys are allowed down there. Now let me tell you something, the basement is creepy as hell. I love it though. It's cold, dark, musty, noisy, and smells like decaying mice and foot sweat. I told you I wasn't normal. Anyways, the walls are made of cinder blocks, the floor is made of exposed concrete, and the ceiling is made of metal with various sized water pipes running along it that leak on occasion. There's the boiler, all the compressors, fuse boxes, and a fold-out cot down there. Why a cot, you ask? Well, you see, I live in that basement. It's really not that bad once you get used to the noise and the smell. I have electrical and heat. There's a laundry tub with a working water faucet for when I need to wash up, and a 5-gallon bucket with a lid on it for when I have to use the bathroom late at night when the store is closed and the alarm is on. I've got a microwave, a coffee pot, a CD player, and a portable DVD player. Plus, I live at the grocery store, so I've got all kinds of food whenever I want, as long as I pay for it on payday. Anyways, it was about 5 years ago on a Tuesday, the end of August, around 2:30 p.m. I was down in the basement on break, crocheting a blanket for my mom. Don't laugh at me. I was crocheting the blanket and boogieing down to Time Life's greatest disco hits of the 70s. Casey and the Sunshine Band, the Bee Gees, Donna Summers, the Village People, just to name a few. Disco is going to make a comeback one day. Just wait and see. I was down in the basement and getting down when suddenly I heard several loud bangs that sounded like metal slamming against concrete. I looked behind me and saw the boiler dancing across the floor. Holy jumping Jesus on the dance floor, I said. It's gonna blow. I threw the blanket and ran up the stairs as fast as I could. I burst through the basement door onto the sales floor and screamed, "The boiler's gonna blow! Everybody run!" People began screaming and running for their lives. Some lumberjack-looking guy came hopping out of the bathroom as he tried to pull his pants up. He had pink, lacy women's underwear on with little hearts on them. Wow, you don't see that every day, I thought to myself. Anyways, I knew the boiler was going to blow at any second, and the front door was blocked by people trying to leave. So I ran as fast as I could and did a safe at-third slide to register 8, then crawled underneath to try and shield myself from the blast. I could see through a small crack in the metal. I watched as both bathrooms and cash office exploded as the boiler exploded upwards from below, knocking out the power and sending the store into complete darkness. The security lights came on seconds later. They ran off a generator out back. Anyways, scalding hot boiling water, bricks and pieces of toilet, sinks, urinals, and large chunks of metal and wood flew through the air, as well as all the money in the cash office. The sound of car alarms and blood-curdling screams were heard soon after. Luckily, Candy, Catherine, and Pat were all on the coffee run at the time, so the office was completely empty. You see, we didn't have a safe at the time. We kept all the money locked up in a large wooden cabinet. Yeah, we got one now, though. Anyways, several people were hit by the explosion, sending their several burned, mutilated bodies and body parts through the air as well, landing on displays, shelvings, and the floor. The large pieces of wood and metal slamming down onto their bodies, killing those that weren't dead already. As the scalding hot boiling water poured down, several others began to reach and dive for the falling money. They began to scream in pain as they fell victim to their greed. The water landed on their faces, hands, and clothing. Their skin began to bubble and liquefy as they fell to the floor. Their clothes melt to their body until there was nothing left but a mound of colored goo and blood on the floor. That vision will forever haunt me in my dreams. I can still hear their screams, even in the daytime. Now let me tell you something. I've seen a lot of burn victims as a member of the fire department, but I never seen anything like this before. 23 people had died that day. Luckily, all the employees were accounted for. Anyways, the water shower slowly diminished. I crawled out from under the register, unharmed. I'm not gonna lie, I grabbed a few handfuls of cash as I stood to check for any of the survivors. I used it to buy a new pair of roller skates, and a couple of outfits like Tony Manero wore in an all-time favorite movie, Saturday Night Fever. You know, John Travolta's character. As I stood up, I saw about 20 people, including several employees standing there, staring at the damage. I turned to my left and saw directly out onto the street. The whole left corner of the building was gone, and there was huge gaping holes in the floor, sunlight pouring in from the outside. Through the opening, I could see damaged cars, dead bodies, and body parts lying on the grass, the sidewalk, and in the road. One guy's body was up in the tree, with a toilet seat cover covering his face. That's a real crappy way to go, I thought. Dust and debris was everywhere. People were screaming and crying as the car alarms blared away. I walked out of the front door, which was still intact. It was missed by mere inches. Some customers walked out with me. Others went to tend to the injured in the store. Now that I saw out in that street, it looked like a war zone. Cars turned over on their sides, windows were blown out, large pieces of metal and wood, as well as what used to be toilets, sinks, and urinals embedded in the road, the sidewalk, and landscape. The roof section of the store was hanging off the side of the roof of the bank across from the street. Jesus Christ, how big was this explosion? More bodies had laid scattered all around, some alive, some were dead. People were actually fighting, well, more like pushing and shoving each other to get to their remaining money on the ground. It was devastating. Pat, Catherine, and Candy were just returning from their coffee run. I ran over to Pat and told him what happened. He just stood there in shock for a while. He finally snapped out of it, and we all went to help the injured. Pat started grabbing all the money he could off the ground as he made his way there. Someone, somewhere, must have called the police, as they showed up minutes later with the fire department, several ambulances, and the coroner. Reggie blocked off the street, and the EMTs tended to the injured, as I and several members of the fire department went to go check the structural stability of this building. Yeah, I know. Normally I wouldn't be allowed to go inside a damaged building, since I'm not part of the fire department anymore, but they let me go for old time's sakes. Anyways, once they decided that the building was safe, the coroner then removed all of the bodies and the body parts in the store and on the street. Then they left. The ambulances loaded up as many of the seriously injured people as they could, then left for the nearest hospital, then came back for the less injured. After we exchanged a few high fives and had some small talk, the fire department left as well. Reggie and his deputies took our statements, and they left too. Pat and the rest of the employees, including myself, spent the next 7 hours cleaning up what was left of the store, as best as we could. Pat sent Catherine to get several huge tarps and rope from one of his storage units down the street to cover the hole inside the building. Now let me tell you something. It took 4 days for the town's cleanup crew to clean up all of the debris. It took 6 months and almost $100,000 to repair the damages to the store, the sidewalks, the road, and the landscape. Thanks to Barnaby's being a historical landmark, Pat didn't have to pay anything. The town took care of it all. But that's well, you know. Bob from the hardware store came by the next day and built a security wall within the store so that no one would fall in the hole, and so the repair crews could work and the store would be open at the same time. Thanks, Bob. We had 2 porta potties out back to use as restrooms. Produce, deli, and the meat room all washed their trays and pans at the funeral home next door. They were nice enough to let us use their cleaning facilities. Yuck. Although Pat did decide to get a huge steel safe. You would think that he would have put in one of those fancy water heaters as well, but no. I want to keep this place as original as possible, he said. Now, I don't know where he found this thing, but you guessed it, he put in another boiler. So here I sit, down in the basement with this creepy boiler lurking over my shoulder, listening to disco, crocheting my mom another blanket, and telling you this story. Hey, what time is it? Oh, Mamma Mia, in a short bus. I have to get dressed. I have to go see people. It's disco night at the roller rink. It's time to get my boogie on. There ain't no high like rock and roll. Yeah, I love that song. Helix did it back in the '83. They're a Canadian band. It's off their No Rest for the Wicked album, in case you wanted to check it out. Anyways, that is my motto. I don't need all that other crap to get high. No way. Just give me a Fender guitar, a Marshall stack, and hit an open chord, and I'm already there. Anyways, hi, I'm Ricky. Ricky Blaze. Well, that's my stage name. My real name is Richard Bellington, but that doesn't sound too rock and rollish now, does it? Anyways, my friends call me Ace because of my favorite guitarist, Ace Frehley from Kiss. Who's Kiss? You're kidding me, right? They're only the best theatrical rock band ever. I have all 31 of their albums, plus a few bootlegs, and I've seen them live in concert at least 15 times. I went there with one of our customers, Donovan. He's definitely afraid of that girl that works in the floral section, but that is definitely a different story. Anyways, I play guitar in an 80s hard rock heavy metal cover band called Blackened Image. I work dairy here at Barnaby's. It's not the most glamorous gig in the world, but hey, it pays the bills. I mess with the LP guy, Winston, a lot. He follows me around, watching me. I guess he thinks I'm gonna steal stuff because of my long hair and my tattoos. I like to take stuff from one aisle, carry it around a little bit, and then drop it off in another aisle just to mess with him. I heard he had a breakdown or something years ago. The pallet jacks we use to unload the trucks are ancient. We don't have any of this multi-battery powered electric jacks that the big name stores do. No way. We have manual pallet jacks. For those of you that don't know what a manual pallet jack is, it's a piece of machinery that's used to move pallets from one place to another. It has 2 metal forks on wheels, connected to a safety bar on wheels, connected to a metal crank handle with an adjustable lever attached to it. You have to manually roll it into the open end of the pallet, then push down the lever and then crank it up by repeatedly pushing the handle up and down. This will raise the pallet. Then pull it to wherever you're going and hope that you're strong enough to pull the 4,000 plus pound pallet that's on it and then push the lever up to lower it into place. It's really a pain in the ass. Anyways, a couple of guys have told me that they turned in stories to Mr. Barnaby about weird and strange things that have happened here. Now this story will rock your socks off. I've never seen anything like this before. I even wrote a song about it. Anyways, before I tell you this, I cannot emphasize enough that I do not use drugs of any sort and gave up drinking 18 years ago. So this was not a hallucination caused by either of the two. Now check this out. It was last August, around 8 o'clock in the morning. There was a full moon the night before. Now everyone knows a full moon brings out the crazies, and a lot of weird stuff happens during that time. Anyways, we just received our dairy truck. Stuart let the driver in, then went out in front for a smoke, leaving just me and the driver alone in the back room. Now our contract with the supplier says that the driver must unload the pallets from the truck and place the pallets on the back room floor, and the associates will put them where they need to go. It's a liability issue or something. I really don't know. He opened up the roll-up door to the truck, and immediately we heard a low squeaking noise coming from inside that truck. I thought it was the refrigeration unit going bad, but I was way wrong. The driver and I put the large metal plank across the opening between the loading dock door and the back of the truck. The driver then started to unload the pallets. After each pallet, the squeaking noise got louder. 4 pallets of freight and 3 pallets of milk later, the noise was almost deafening. All that remained at that point was a full pallet of eggs. The driver took the jack into the truck, went under the pallet, and jacked it up, started to unload it from the truck. Apparently, he didn't have the pallet jack up high enough because it hit the metal plank, causing it to shift and fall down into the opening. The front wheel of the pallet jack then fell onto the opening as well. Momentum took over, causing the pallet to fall forward, and the safety bar gave way. The pallet came crushing down upon the driver, who fell backwards, slamming his head hard on the concrete floor. Blood was pouring out of the back of his head as the massive weight of the pallet lay upon him. I knew he was probably dead. Anyways, I was standing over the baller when it happened. Tommy and Zeke, who had just got done making a bale, so the baler was empty. I don't mess with that thing unless I absolutely have to. I heard about what happened to Stephanie. Anyways, now brace yourself, because what happened next is something that nightmares are made out of. As the pallet of eggs came crushing down on the driver, the eggs obviously broke. You would have expected whites and yolks to come pouring out of the boxes, but no, it was blood, and lots of it. Suddenly the boxes started to shake. A scratching noise was heard as well. The boxes began to rip open, and these things came flying and crawling out. Dead ones fell out and just laid there on the floor until these things started to eat their bodies. It was gross. Now let me tell you about these things. They were little chicks, but they weren't normal little chicks. They were kind of what looked like a half chick, half bat. I dated a goth chick once. It's kind of the same thing. Well, not really. Never mind. Anyways, they just kept on coming. They were everywhere. They had to be at least 100 of them. They had little chick bodies with little bat wings, a chick head with a bat face, and a beak. These things were cool looking, but mean as hell. I jumped in the baler, closed the safety gate, afraid for my life, as some of them attacked the truck driver's dead carcass, while others completely annihilated the back room. They ripped up the driver's flesh, tore apart his arms, his neck, and his face, pulling the skin and tissue straight off the bone, eating it. Blood was everywhere. It was horrifying. Through the safety gate, I saw them finish off the driver, until there was nothing left but skeletal remains. Meanwhile, the others were tearing open bags of sugar, boxes of cereal, and cases of water, among other things, creating a huge mess all over the backroom floor. I pulled out my phone, called 911. I didn't really know how to explain what was going on, so I just told them that there was an accident, and to send out the cops, the coroner, and animal control. I hung up from them, just in time to see one of those things fly into a 2-liter bottle of Coke. Its beak penetrated the bottle, and pressure blew him and the soda straight across the room, slamming it into the bay doors. That was pretty hilarious. I had to hold back the laughter so that they wouldn't find me hiding in the baler. Anyways, the little guy was okay though. He got up, shook it off, and went back to eating stuff. The cops and animal control showed up about 10 minutes later. Sirens were blaring. I guess the sirens hurt their ears because they all stopped at the same time. They let out a blood-curdling squeak in unison. Some ran for small openings between the fallen pallet and the bay door, trying to escape through the field behind the store. Others ran through the double door into the sales floor. Horrific screams of terror could be heard soon after. I opened the safety gate and climbed out of the baler. I ran to the bay door and saw these things running in a pack, through the field and heading towards the neighboring housing development. There was nothing that I could do. I turned around and headed for the sales floor. The screams were getting louder and more intense. I walked through the doors, turned to the corner, and saw that I can only describe as the attacking scene from The Birds. That old Alfred Hitchcock film. Vertigo, Psycho, Rear Window, nothing. Never mind. Groups of these things were attacking the customers and eating them, just like the truck driver. People were running and screaming, jumping over the bodies, as these things tore at the hair and clothing until they succumbed to their attack and fell down. I hid behind a huge Velveeta cheese display so that they couldn't see me. Suddenly, multiple gunshots could be heard. Many large metal canisters came flying from the front of the store, smashing into walls, displays, and the floor, releasing what I assumed was a tranquilizer gas into the air. I began to cough violently and soon passed out. I woke up about a half an hour later in the back of an ambulance. The doors were wide open, and from my point of view, I could see multiple ambulances and coroner vehicles. EMTs and coroner personnel were loading bodies into the back of them, Animal control personnel were pushing huge boxes that read hazardous waste on the side. They loaded it into the back of the flatbed truck, then left. The ambulances and coroners left as well. The cops came and took my statement. They left too. I was released from the ambulance, and there was nothing physically wrong with me. I stood there in the parking lot with the other people. Some employees, some customers. People were crying, shaking, and talking about what had happened. I was just glad to be alive. For some strange reason, the cops didn't shut down the store this time. They told Pat that it was safe to go back to work. That was odd. Pat did shut down the store for a little while, though. He made Steven and the rest of us clean up the mess on the sales floor and the back room, then opened the store back up about an hour later. By this time, it was around 12:30. I was getting hungry, so I decided to go take my lunch. After all that, you wouldn't think that I would be hungry, but I've got a stomach of steel. I watch too many horror movies for stuff like that to even affect me. Anyways, I went into the cooler, grabbed my lunch bag. Ironically, my girlfriend made me chicken salad sandwich with some chips. I know, right? I sat down on the break room table and started to eat. Suddenly, I heard a little squeaking noise coming from behind the trash can. I thought to myself, not again. I grabbed somebody's umbrella that was sitting by the wall and prepared to beat the living crap out of this thing if it tried to attack me. I gently moved the trash can away to find a little chick. A normal little chick just sitting there, shaking and chirping like it was scared. I picked him up and fed him some of my sandwich. If he only knew. I guess he was hungry, because he stopped chirping at this point. I kept him in my jacket pocket till the end of my shift, and then I took him home with me. I bring him to all of our band practices, and we're thinking about making him the band mascot. What do you guys think? Anyways, it took me a while to come up with a name for him. Then I thought about it. I decided to name him Gizmo. Thank you for stealing at Barnaby's. That's what I would tell all the shoplifters that I catch, as the cops are putting them in their cars and taking them down to the station. You see, if they didn't try and steal stuff, I wouldn't have a job. So it's kind of like security for me. I'm Winston. I'm the LP guy here at Barnaby's. For those of you who don't know what LP stands for, well, unless you've been living under a rock your whole life, you already know what it stands for, but I'm going to tell you. It stands for loss prevention, which means that I keep an eye out for employee theft, customer theft, fraudulent coupons, overbilled invoices, things like that. Anything that would cause Barnaby's to lose money in any way, shape, or form. Now, I'm sure that you've been told this before, but it's a very old store. We don't have one of those 24-hour DVR recording systems like the big name stores do. We still record everything on VHS tapes using an old VCR system. We have to change the tapes every 8 hours and hope nothing happens during the time that we're changing those tapes. We have a few cameras throughout the store. Actually, 14 in total. One in each register, one in the cash office, one down in HBC aisle, that's the health and beauty care aisle, one on every single exit, 2 in the parking lot, and 1 in the surveillance room. The cops always come by and review the tapes whenever something happens. Yeah, they've been here quite a bit. They came by a few days after Jimmy saved that dog from dying in that car last summer. My tapes helped to convict that guy, and that's a different story. I've been here about 35 years now. Yes, I'm old. I thought that I have seen it all, but I was wrong. Now that I know that Pat is collecting stories about weird and horrible things that has happened here, this is more strange than anything. I still can't figure this one out. This happened about 15 years ago, and hasn't happened since. Thank God. Anyways, it was way before Pat even took ownership of this place. Back then it was owned by his father, David. He was a really cool dude, strict but fair. He taught Pat that everything he knows about business. I remember Pat when he was just a little kid. He would come into the store with his dad and take them up in his watchtower. That's what I like to call my surveillance room. Yes, I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. Actually, it's a Bob Dylan song, but Jimmy did it better. Just my opinion. That's way before your time. We'd sit up there and just watch people shop. And now he owns the place. I've gotten way off track here. That's what happens when you get old. Here we go. It was mid-afternoon on a Thursday. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in my watchtower looking out the window at all the shoppers. Actually, it's not a window, it's a two-way mirror, which means that I can see out, but all the people down below see as a huge mirror on the wall. So if you're ever in a store and you see a mirror on the wall that seems kind of out of place, yeah, that's the surveillance room, and you're being watched. Anyways, nothing has really happened that day. Just the regular customers in here buying their usual stuff. Kids reading the magazines as their parents shop. Old folks hanging out in the produce having a meet and greet session. The normal stuff. I noticed a person. I assumed that it was a man, dressed in a long black hooded cape that dragged on the ground, standing in the barbecue section, which is the last aisle over, all the way against the wall. I couldn't see his face. He was putting packages of toothpicks inside the cape. Toothpicks, of all things. Anyways, I checked the VCR to make sure that it was recording and made a beeline for that aisle. My first catch of the day. I walked into the aisle, said, "Sir, can you please come with me?" He immediately ran in the other direction, dropping the toothpicks in the process. Well, more like glided than ran. It was very weird. Anyways, I gave chase. He nearly ran over an older lady pushing her cart down the aisle. She didn't even acknowledge what was going on. She just gave me a strange look as I ran right past her. He reached the end of the aisle. I expected him to go right, down the back aisle, but instead he went left, straight into a wall. I turned the corner, expecting to see him on the floor, but all I saw was a black cape lying on the floor against the wall. He just kind of disappeared, into thin air. I stood there dumbfounded and scratching my head. What the hell happened? I slowly bent over and picked up the cape, carried it back to my room. I hung it on the nail on a wall. I was sitting there just staring at it, trying to figure out what was going on, when out of the corner of my eye, on camera 6, I saw another person in a black cape standing in the middle of the parking lot. Their head was down, so again I couldn't see their face, and their hands were cupped in front of them. I again ran down the stairs as fast as I could, ran through the store and out the front door. I got to the edge of the parking lot. I saw this person begin to raise their head, but I was still too far away to see his face. He tilted his head back and raised his arms upward, as if it was screaming at the sky. Suddenly, a black SUV came from around the corner, headed towards him, driving much faster than he should have been in a parking lot. I screamed for him to stop. Just as the SUV was about to hit him, the cape dropped to the asphalt. As the SUV drove over top of it, this thing just disappeared as well, just like the first one. I stood there screaming, "Did you see that? Did anyone see that?" Everyone just looked at me like I was crazy. Am I the only one seeing this thing? I thought to myself. Man, I gotta stop drinking so much coffee. The caffeine's messing with my head. Anyways, I walked over to pick up the cape as well, and started to walk back towards the store. People just stared at me as I walked past them. I got back to my room, and I hung up that cape on the wall as well. I sat down in my chair and closed my eyes. My mind was going in circles. What is going on? What are these things? Where did they come from? Why can't anyone else see them? All these questions were going around in my head. Am I crazy? Have I been drugged? Is this for real? Suddenly, I felt an intense burning on my shoulders, and massive pressure holding me down in my chair. I opened my eyes and tried to scream, but nothing came out. All the monitors, all 14 of them, suddenly lost signal, then simultaneously came back on, showing the same camera image. It was the image from my surveillance room camera. There was a black hooded figure standing right behind me, holding me down. My body was paralyzed, and I couldn't move. The burning was growing intolerable. My head thrust backwards with the force of 1,000 angry men. I started to hear a low, guttural growl, like something from the depths of hell. As the figure leaned its head forward, directly over mine, I should have been able to see its face, but I couldn't. What I did see was a dark blanket of nothingness. Then, like a movie being played, I saw still frame photos and short film bursts of Native Americans being brutally slaughtered and tortured, their dead bodies lying in bloody mounds and forgotten burial grounds. I've heard this place was built on Indian burial grounds. but I never expected this. It was like one of these brainwashing films that you see in spy movies. It was horrifying. The growl intensified until it was almost deafening. The entire room started to shake. The mirror burst outwards, faking to the sales floor below. I screamed. The pain and fear that caused me to lose consciousness. I was awoken by David, pounding on the door and screaming, "Winston, what's going on in there? Open the damn door!" I rushed to my feet, opened up the door, and saw David standing there. He said, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" I just looked at him, confused and disoriented. I said, "I really don't know." I shut the door and turned back into the room. Noticed that the cameras had turned to normal. The mirror was back in its place, and the figure was gone. Its cape lay in a ball behind my chair. I quickly stopped the tape and reviewed it. I was sure that I caught something on there, but there was nothing. No figure stuffing toothpicks in its cape. Just me running through the aisle and toothpicks falling on the ground. Nothing almost getting ran over by that SUV. Just me running through the parking lot and screaming. No figure holding me down. Just me spasming in my chair. No, this can't be happening. I'm not crazy. It has happened. I know it did. I reviewed the tapes once again. Still, there was nothing. I grabbed all of the capes and the tape. I ran down the stairs. Told David that I was leaving. I hopped in my car and left. I needed to get out of there fast, for my own sanity. I threw the capes and the tape in the back seat, burned rubber out of the parking lot. I drove around, aimlessly, for about an hour, trying to clear my head. But every time I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw the capes, and it all came rushing back to me. I saw the town church off in the distance. Now, I was never a very religious man up to that point, but after the day that I had, I knew that I needed Jesus. I pulled into the church, went to go grab the capes and tape out of the back seat. The capes were gone. They disappeared, just like the figures. I started to panic. I grabbed the tape and ran into the church, screaming for someone to help me. Everyone turned and stared at me. An older gentleman approached me, introduced himself as Father Thomas. Anyways, I told Father Thomas what happened and showed him the tape. He took me into his office, played the tape in his VCR. There was nothing to it, nothing but snow. Father Thomas suggested that he perform a blessing on me and arrange for a baptism. I obliged. I was rebaptized 2 days later, and have been an active member of the church ever since. I returned to work the very next day, with no questions asked. David just shook my hand and said, "I'm glad that you're feeling better. Now get back to work." I really missed that man. That's a different story. I really hope you enjoy. My name is Sam. I'm the scan analyst here at Barnaby's. For those of you that don't know what a scan analyst is, it's just a glorified name for price checker. I'm in charge of making sure that all the pricing for all the items in the store are correct. I'm in charge of grocery, HBA, frozen food, dairy, front-end candy, tobacco, plus all the vendor items. I have to make sure that the little white price stickers that the employees put on the items match the price in my price book that Pat gives me every single week, and that they both match the little white sticker on the shelf. Produce, deli, and the meat room all have their own pricing systems, so they can take care of their own. We don't have any of those fancy laser tag printing machines like the big name stores do. I have to handwrite all the prices on all the tags for all the items. My hands hurt so bad by the end of the day. Anyways, when I was little, I wanted to be a marine biologist. But as I grew up, I developed a phobia, which made me fear fish. The way that they swim underwater with no arms or legs, and those beady little eyes. Ugh. I can't even go into the fish section of a pet store without freaking out. Hell, I had trouble watching Finding Nemo for God's sakes, and that's a cartoon. But anyways, you don't really care about that. Let me tell you what happened. It was about 5:45 in the morning. Pat and I are at the coffee shop across the street, like we always do. We take turns buying coffee for each other. I take mine with cream and sugar. He takes his black. It's pretty disgusting. Anyways, we go to get our coffee. Made our way back to the store around 6 o'clock. Now I know what you're thinking. Why are you heading to the store at 6 if it doesn't open up until 7? Well, the store doesn't open up to the public until 7. Pat and I usually go in early to get a head start on things that we have to do for the day. He does paperwork and payroll, while I start my price checks. Sometimes other employees come in early, as well, for cleaning or to get a head start during the holidays, or days we know that we are going to be busy. Today was a normal day. Well, it was supposed to be. Anyways, we arrived at the store, got out of our cars, and started walking towards the building. From out of nowhere came this guy who was about 6 feet tall, dressed in all black, with a black ski mask covering his face. I gasped and stood there in fear. He walked up to Pat, who didn't seem fazed at all, and asked, "What time do you open?" 7 o'clock, Pat said. Then with lightning speed, the guy pulled a handgun out of his waistband of his pants and put it to the back of Pat's head and said, "You're open now. Get inside, both of you. Lock the doors." I was shaking, crying, and scared to death at this point. "Shut up," he screamed at me. We walked into the store with only the security lights to see by. The motion detectors kicked in and turned all the lights on and turned the security lights off, startling all of us. "Get on your knees and don't move," he ordered. We did exactly as we were told. Waving the gun back and forth between the both of us, he screamed, "Where's the money?" "The cash office. It's in the cash office," Pat said nonchalantly. "Get up," he told Pat. "Let's go, and don't you move," he told me, "or I'll put a bullet in your head." I stayed right there as I was. Anyways, they walked back to the cash office, went inside, and came back out a few minutes later. The guy was holding a blue bank deposit bag, which I assume was all the money, still holding the gun to Pat's head. "Turn around," he told Pat. Pat turned, and as he did, the guy stepped back, raised the gun, and said, "Have a nice day." Then bang, bang, bang! 3 shots directly into Pat's chest. Pat stumbled back, hitting the wall and sliding into a sitting position, then falling over to his right, blood pouring out of his chest and all over the floor. As he struggled to breathe, I screamed as he took his last breath. Pat was dead. The guy ran to go out of the front door, but slammed headfirst into it. He ran headfirst into a locked door. Now that I think about it, that shit was pretty funny. The idiot. Anyways, he stumbled back, holding his head. Just then, Lily, the Native American woman that runs that place out back, "You came in too early," apparently came out of the back room and screamed as well. The guy turned and fired 2 more shots in her direction. Luckily, he missed her. Lily began screaming. Later on, what I found out is that she was screaming for help in Cherokee. Anyways, all of a sudden, every single light in the store went on. A single gunshot, and a clicking of an empty gun was heard soon after. Clicking, I thought. He's out of bullets. I went to go get up, but quickly changed my mind, because just then, the sound of drums filled the air as an intense bright white ball of light began to glow above Pat's dead body, and illuminating the area where we were, as well. "What the fuck?" I heard the guy say. He threw the gun, screaming like a little girl, repeatedly as he fumbled with the lock, trying to get it open. A dim yellow light began to rise from the ground up behind him. The light quickly spread to cover the entire floor as transparent images of Native Americans, stomping in places and clapping, rose from it. The drums were getting louder as the chanting began. The sound was nearly deafening. Lily screamed that word over and over again. The guy's entire body then began to convulse, while he struggled with the door, then snapped a 180-degree turn, like it was spun around by an unseen force, and slammed back hard against the door. Several whooshing sounds were heard as arrows from all directions suddenly appeared out of thin air and shot directly into the guy's chest, stomach, arms, and legs, one right after the other. A few arrows hit his groin area, as well as his face, through both of his eye sockets and his mouth as he screamed. Blood started randomly oozing from every hole. His bloody arrow-covered body then fell face first to the ground, driving the arrows completely through his body and out the other side. He looked like a human pincushion. Anyways, the images stopped stomping all at once and just stood there. Everything had stopped. It was dead silent. The bright white ball of light then began to pulsate very fast, like a turn signal about to blow. It then shot directly into Pat's blood-soaked body. His body then lit up so brightly that I had to cover my eyes to shield them from the light. After a few seconds, a loud bang was heard, like the sound of a sonic boom, causing the entire floor to shake, knocking over displays and the green M&M stand up cardboard cutout that we had at the front registers. You know, the girl M&M. I love M&Ms, the way that they melt in your mouth. It's mind-blowing. Anyways, after the shaking stopped, every light in the store came back on, and the images disappeared. I sat there with my hands covering my face, shaking and crying. Lily came running out from the back room to make sure that I was okay. She helped me up, and made our way to the front door. I put my hand on the right side of my face, blocking my vision, so that I wouldn't have to see Pat's dead body. We had no choice but to step into the blood of the guy. As we got to the front door, unlocked it, and prepared to leave. Just as we were about to walk out the door, we heard a low, moaning sound. We looked to our right and saw Pat. He was moving. He was still alive. There weren't any bullet holes or blood. Nothing. It was like it never even happened. He sat up and began to pat his chest, then looked at us in total confusion. We both ran to him and hugged him and helped him up off the floor. "What happened?" he said. "I'll explain later. Let's just get the hell out of here," I told him. We unlocked the door. Pat accidentally, or on purpose, kicked the guy in the head as he grabbed the bloody bank bag, and we all stepped outside. There were customers waiting for the store to open. "I'm sorry, folks. Barnaby's is closed today," he said. The crowd had disappeared as Lily called the police from her cell phone. We walked over to the coffee shop across the street. I bought Pat the biggest cup of coffee that they had. After what he's been through, I think he deserves it. The cops showed up about 20 minutes later with a couple of ambulances and the coroner. We walked back to the store when they arrived. The EMTs tended to Pat, Lily, and myself, and found nothing physically wrong with any of us. Pat was physically dead less than an hour ago from 3 gunshot wounds to the chest, and now he's just perfectly fine. They saved his life, I thought. I've got a new respect for Native Americans, let me tell you. Anyways, the coroner loaded up the guy's body, arrows and all, and then left. The cops took our statements and left. So did the EMTs. Pat called Steven to come in and clean up the mess. He's waiting inside for him to show up now. Lily went to go open up her place, and I was walking to my car so that I can leave as well when the blonde lady asked to talk to me. So that's what happened? My name is Jack Haggins. I never believed in ghosts until I came toe-to-toe with one. So I set out on a journey to record what I once witnessed onto video. Along with my good friend, Rick, and a guy that we met at Taco Bell, Darren. Together we will travel to the most creepiest, craziest, and spookiest places in the state in an attempt to capture evidence of the paranormal. These are our ghost ventures. That was the intro to our ghost hunting web series. Yeah, I know, it sounds a lot like that other ghost hunting show on that cable network, but that's strictly coincidental. It's a good show. Well, at least it used to be. Anyways, my name is Jack. I was the lead investigator for the Ghost Ventures crew. And if you noticed, I said was. We don't ghost hunt anymore. Hell, we don't even talk anymore. And I'll tell you why. Let me sum it all up in one word. And that word is Barnaby's. Yeah, that place is off the charts. Now, I've never been to Pennhurst or Paveglia Island, but I've seen those episodes, and Barnaby's has got to be ranked up there with those two. I mean, anyone that would set foot in that place willingly needs to have their head examined twice. We've done investigations at abandoned schools, run-down churches, a couple of cemeteries, even falling down dilapidated buildings. We've caught EVPs, felt phantom cool spots, and had some personal experiences, but nothing like we experienced there. Now, as part of the agreement we made with Mr. Barnaby when we investigated that place, was that if any weird or strange things happened, we would write them down in story form and give it to him, in exchange for letting us investigate the store for free. That place messed my head up, so much that it took me 3 years and lots of therapy just to be able to even write this. But I will remember that night vividly until the day that I die. So here it goes. I'll mail it to him later. Anyways, I first found out about that place through a conversation with my neighbor. Apparently, my neighbor's daughter's ex-boyfriend's sister got a dog from the guy that worked at the ASPCA, and Barnaby's as well. But that's a different story. Anyway, they became friends, and he told her all about the crazy stuff that happened there. She told her brother, he told my neighbor's daughter, and my neighbor's daughter told her father, and her father had told me. Anyways, I did some research and found out that yes, there was a very old grocery store called Barnaby's a few towns over. Newspaper articles revealed that all kinds of horrible events and freak accidents happened at that store, and the store was built on Indian burial grounds. That's what got me interested in investigating that place. Sure, we've investigated cemeteries before, but Indian burial grounds? That's on a whole different level. I looked the place up on Google Maps, got a phone number, and the directions to the store. I called the phone number and talked to a very nice man named Pat, who graciously agreed to let us come and investigate his store that Saturday night at 9 o'clock. Pat agreed to meet us Saturday afternoon to do some interviews and to get some pictures to use in the show. I called Rick and Darren, told them that I found an old grocery store to investigate. I didn't mention an Indian burial ground. They were excited and looking forward to going. Anyway, Saturday had come. Darren borrowed his aunt's minivan, as he always did, since none of us had a car. He picked up Rick, and we all met back at his house before heading to the store. Now we were in no way a professional ghost hunting team. We didn't have any real equipment, like the big-name teams do. We used our old iPhone 5s as cameras, using a night vision app, and also used it to capture EVPs. That's it. For those of you that don't know what an EVP is, it stands for Electronic Voice Phenomenon. It's believed to be voices of spirits speaking to the living, unintentionally, meaning a random word or phrase spoken for no apparent reason, or intentionally, such as someone asking a question and the spirit responding with an answer. But be careful, some spirits are not very nice. Anyways, we all hopped into the van, made an hour drive over there. Just as we were pulling into the parking lot, out of the corner of my eye, I saw 3 little Native American boys, about 8 or 9 years old, standing on the sidewalk right outside of the store. I turned around and told Rick to get a shot of that. He replied, "A shot of what?" I turned back around, and they were gone. "No way. They were right there," I said, pointing to the sidewalk. "Who?" Darren asked me. I just shook my head. "Never mind. Forget about it," I mumbled. We parked the van and got out. If I knew then what I know now, I would have got back into that van and never stepped foot into that store. Anyway, I walked over to the spot where I saw the kids and found 3 small eagle's feathers on the ground. I was totally freaked out. At this point, I just left them there. Rick and Darren went to go knock on the door. Soon after, an older man emerged from inside the store and introduced himself as Pat. We all shook hands and introduced ourselves. I told Pat about the 3 kids that I saw. He started tapping his toe and clapping his hands and said, "1 little Indian, 2 little Indian, 3 little Indians." You know that old children's nursery rhyme? Then he chuckled to himself. Okay then, I thought to myself. This guy's a few sandwiches short of a picnic. We conducted our interview, and he told us about all the crazy things that happened there. He gave us some history on the place. He also told us that the store was being remodeled, and to be careful of hanging wires, loose floorboards, and things like that. Also that the electric had been shut off, since it was the weekend, and the construction crews would not be back until Monday. He offered to let us go inside and look around to get familiar with the place, but we wanted to wait until our investigation. The element of surprise and all. We ended the interview about 5 p.m. He handed me a key to the store just in case. We still had a couple of hours before it was time for us to investigate. We decided to go see a movie. We passed a movie theater on the way to the store and decided to head there. The new Stephen King movie was out. I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I have all of his movies, most of his books, and a lot of his short stories on audiobook. We met a very nice and very attractive lady named Catherine at the movie theater. We told her that we were investigating Barnaby's that night and asked if she knew anything about the place. She told us that she was the previous owner of the property. that now she was the assistant manager, well, as soon as it opens back up again. We offered to have her come and investigate with us, but she declined, saying that she didn't want to spend any more time in that place than she had to. Now I understand why. When the movie was over, it was a great movie, by the way. I'll have to add it to my DVD collection when it comes out. We headed back to the store for our investigation. We arrived back at the store just as a thunderstorm was fast approaching. Pat was nowhere to be found. I thought that was odd. We found a note on the door saying that he had to tend to an issue at a property he had just sold. The note also said that it was okay to start the investigation. I pulled the key out of my pocket, took the note down, unlocked the door, and turned the night vision apps on, and went to enter the building. Just as I opened up the door, a loud lightning crash hit, lighting up the skies, and scaring the hell out of all three of us. Heavy rain started falling soon after. We practically pushed each other into the store. Once inside, that place was creepy as hell. The air was thick and heavy and almost suffocating. The floor cracked every time you stepped on it. Half the walls were put up. The other half was just wooden beams, wires hanging from the ceiling, and construction equipment laying everywhere. We walked around together for about an hour, just filming and getting a feel for the place. Nothing really happened. We found out that there were 3 main parts to that building: the sales floor, the back room, and a little room off the back room. The bathrooms were boarded up. We couldn't even get in there. So we decided that since there were 3 areas, and there were 3 of us, that we would investigate each area by ourselves. We did rock, paper, scissors to figure out who went where. Darren got the little room, Rick got the back room, and I got the sales floor. Okay, guys, I said, let's do this. We fist bumped each other and went to our designated areas. I began walking around the sales floor, filming and asking questions. I could hear Rick in the background doing the same thing. This went on for about half an hour, when suddenly another lightning strike, just as we heard Darren screaming at the top of his lungs, then the loud thumping of his work boots as he ran through the back room and out to the sales floor. "Oh no, 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 no," he said loudly. Darren, stop," I yelled. "What happened?" Rick came running out shortly after. "What the hell, man," Rick said. "You almost ran me over." Darren turned to look at Rick. You could tell that he was scared. "What happened?" I was in there, asking questions, and panning the camera around the room, when I saw an old Indian guy standing in the corner. I focused the camera on him and asked, "Who are you?" He raised a tomahawk and charged at me. I thought that he was going to kill me. I dropped my phone and got the hell out of there. "Wait a minute," I said. "What's that smell?" "That scared the shit out of me," Darren said. "Literally." "Dude, did you shit yourself?" Rick asked. "Shut up," Darren replied. "Screw this, I'm out of here. I'll be in the van." He then stormed out of the front door. I looked at Rick. He looked back at me. Just then, another loud lightning crash. "I'll go get the phone," Rick said, as he ran off towards the back room. He returned shortly after and handed me the phone. It was still recording. Luckily, it wasn't broken. I stopped the recording and we reviewed the video. Sure enough, there was an old Indian in the corner who charged at the camera. The phone then fell to the floor face down with the camera shooting upward. The same Indian was leaning over the lens, staring into the camera. Then he just disappeared. We had caught an EVP, but we couldn't understand what they were saying. "What's up with the Indian?" Rick asked. "Yeah, maybe I should have mentioned this earlier," I said, "but this place is built on Indian burial grounds." "What?" he asked. "Are you crazy? Cemeteries are one thing, but I'm not messing with an Indian spirit. Here's my phone. I'm out," he said. "Fine," I yelled. "I'll just do it myself." The slamming of a door was heard soon after. I put both phones into my pocket and began walking around, asking questions. I did this for about 15 minutes when another lightning strike hit and all of the security lights came on, blinding me through the night vision. There was no electric in this place. I thought, what the hell is going on? The lights began to flash like a strobe light on crack. The entire building began to shake, causing me to fall back against a large piece of machinery. A low humming sound could be heard, that soon turned into what sounded like drumming. I began to hear Indian war cries in my head, not my ears, but my head. I grabbed my phone and screamed, "I'm not afraid of you." Suddenly, through the walls and the floor came transparent images of about 25 Native Americans on horses, screaming, and swinging tomahawks at me. Okay, now I'm afraid, I thought. They're trying to kill me. I could feel the breeze from the tomahawk swings as I barely missed my head. I screamed like a little scared schoolgirl and started running towards the door. I slipped on one of the loose floorboards and fell, face first, into the ground, knocking myself unconscious. I woke up about 3 hours later, on the sidewalk somehow, drenched from all the rain. It was 3:17 in the morning, the witching hour. The clock at the bank across the street had told me that. I slowly got to my feet, looked over to my right, and saw the same three little Indian boys standing there, just like before. They were completely dry, even in the pouring rain. I screamed again and ran to the side of the building to get to the van, but it was gone. They left me there, and I never saw those guys again. In retrospect, I don't blame them. Anyways, another lightning strike scared me half to death, so much that I began to run, screaming down the middle of the road. Thankfully, there were no cars out late that night. Finally, I stopped running and screaming and called my neighbor. He was kinda upset, but he agreed to come get me. I waited across the street at the bank until he showed up. That was a fun ride home. Anyways, I mailed the key back to Pat. After that night, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. All I kept thinking about was those Indians attacking me. I saw them everywhere that I went, out of the corner of my eye, at work, at gym, even in my own house. I called a therapist about a week later, and I've been seeing her 3 times a week for the past 3 years. I didn't even look at any of the footage. I just threw all the phones away, and I never ghost hunted again. I just couldn't do it after that. I heard that Darren got a job as a camera operator for the UFC, and is making pretty good living at it. I heard that Rick took up plumbing, continued to ghost hunt, put another team together, and got a sweet television deal on a cable network. Good for him. And me, well, I just moved into my new apartment. My neighbor's name is Nick, but that happens to be a different story. Hey, all you creatures of the night out there. This is Mike on the mic, coming to you live from WRPM, your best choice for 80s rock, pop, and metal. Get it? RPM? Rock, pop, metal? Anyways, it's Metal Monday here on WRPM. You know what that means. All metal, all day. That's right. Our next 20 minutes continues Rock Block is brought to you by Barnaby's Grocery Store. Barnaby's, shop till you drop. You'll hear head-begging hits from bands like Metallica, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and Manowar. We're going to start things off with a little bit of Slayer, Rain in Blood. Okay, I'm not really a DJ. There's no WRPM, and there's no music playing. It's just something that I do to entertain myself. My name is Mike. I'm the new grocery manager here at Barnaby's. Unfortunately, the previous store manager was killed in a freak storm accident a couple months ago. May he rest in peace. Anyways, my dream job is to be a radio DJ. No, not the kind of DJ that you see in clubs, at parties, or wedding conceptions. An actual DJ. I know with modern technology and apps like Pandora, iHeartRadio, and Google Play, you can be your own DJ. But still, it's what I want to do. As I said, I'm new here. I got hired on just as they were getting ready to restock the shelves for the re-grand opening. I used to work at one of those big-name grocery stores, but got tired of being a trained monkey. They would tell us what product to put where, what displays to build, when to take them down, and what time you had to get it all done by. It was way too micromanaged. But here at Barnaby's, I get to think for myself, use my brain a little bit. I like that. I'm not the only newbie here. There's Ryan. He replaced Tommy, who finally got his RN license, and is now working full-time plus at the local hospital. So I've heard. There's Justin. He replaced Jimmy, who finally got his dream job of working at the ASPCA full-time, like he always wanted to. There's a bunch of new deli workers, cashiers, produce help, stock crew. We're all in orientation together. That was the most boring 5 hours of my life. Then there's the new assistant manager, Catherine. She says to call her Kitty, but that's a different story. Stephen told me that the old assistant manager fell in love with one of the carnies from the carnival last year and ran off to go join the circus. Now, let me tell you, the new assistant manager could manage me any day. Yes, ma'am. Wait, what? Did I just say that out loud? Never mind. Apparently, she's real good friends with Mr. Barnaby. He's one lucky man. I think she's the previous owner of this property. I was talking to her the other day while trying not to drool on myself. She said that since she had people to run her theater, she thought that she would help Mr. Barnaby out for a little while, even though the whole Indian burial ground thing still freaks her out. What Indian burial ground, I thought. Anyways, with just one look at this place, you can tell that Barnaby's is a very, very old store. We don't have many of those big metal gondolas to display our products, like a big name store does. Now, for those of you that don't know what a gondola is, it's a large metal fixture with adjustable shelvings on both sides that's used in grocery stores, department stores, basically any store that has product to be displayed for sale. They are usually placed side by side in rows about 10 feet apart, bolted together, as well as being bolted to the floor, thus creating aisle 1, 2, and so on, like you would see in grocery stores. Anyways, like I said, we don't have any of those. We have large freestanding bookcases placed back to back and side to side, creating our aisles. They are bolted together, but not to the floor, which makes no sense to me. Let me tell you what happened a few days ago at the re-grand opening. I'll pass this on to Mr. Barnaby the next time I see him. This place was looking sharp thanks to the new investors. They completely funded the project to rebuild this place back to the way that it was, including all the antique registers, cold cases, freezers, lighting, floors, all of it. That's what Winston told me. He's a church guy, so I don't think that he would lie. They're a pair of brothers from New York. I believe their last name is Marconi, Macaroni, Rigatoni, something Italian, I don't know. Don't tell them that I said that, though. They have a bunch of associates that follow them everywhere. They built a rather large room off the back floor of the store, with a private entrance to the side, and a door in the back room. No one, and I mean no one that works here, not even Mr. Barnaby, is allowed in that room, unless you know the password. And there's always the same big, fat refrigerator-looking guy with no neck standing at the door. Yeah, that kind of guy that you wouldn't want to meet alone in a dark alley. Anyways, I have no idea as to what they're doing back there. I'm not stupid. I've seen Scarface a million times. So yeah, say hello to my little friend. I love that movie. Anyways, back to the story. Like I said, this place was looking sharp. The floors were shining. The shelves were full. At least they looked like they were. It's something that people in the grocery business call fronting. That's not really important, though. Anyways, we had a huge banner hanging right above the front entrance with the words "Re-Grand Opening" on it, obviously. Candy was in the merchandising booth outside giving away free t-shirts and keychains to the first 500 customers. We even had an actual radio DJ broadcasting the live event. I was so jealous. He let me do a live commercial spot and said he'd talk to the station manager about me. That was cool. It's a country station, but you have to start somewhere, right? Anyways, there were balloons and streamers everywhere. Deli and produce were giving out free samples. Jim from the meat room was outside grilling up hamburgers and hot dogs to sell to the customers. Breyers even donated 300 gallons of ice cream. They had a huge refrigerator truck set up on the side of the store, giving free ice cream away. It was mid-July, about 90 degrees outside. This place was packed. Mr. Barnaby was standing just inside the front door, greeting customers as they walked in, like a Walmart greeter would do. I was walking around asking customers if I could help them find anything, as was the rest of my crew. The Macarena brothers, or whatever the hell their name is, they weren't even there. Mr. Barnaby said they went to New York to pick up supplies, right? We were having a great time, until all the lights went out. There were a few seconds of total darkness before the security lights came on. Little kids started screaming and crying as their parents tried to desperately calm them down and leave the store. There was barely enough light to see your hand in front of your face. Mr. Barnaby, myself, and other employees started moving the customers up to the front of the store for checkout before the backup generators lost all power. I checked the bathrooms for any lingering customers. That was a bad idea. I walked in and saw an old Native American guy in full headdress staring at the side wall in the handicap stall. He was glowing. What the hell, I said to myself. He turned to look at me. Our eyes met. My vision started to get real blurry. I shook my head and blinked a couple of times. Then he was gone. Vanished into thin air. What just happened, I thought. My mind raced back to the conversation that I had with Catherine where she mentioned the Indian burial ground thing. I started freaking out. You mean this place is haunted? I screamed like a little girl and ran out of the bathroom. As I did, a foul stench was in the air. It hit my nose and stopped me dead in my tracks. It smelled like rotten potatoes, nasty butt crack, and death, all mixed together. I had to count backwards from 10 just to stop myself from throwing up. In the dim lighting, I could see several employees and customers begin to vomit on each other. Several fights had broken out. People were throwing punches and vomiting at the same time. It was disgusting, but in a cool way. It looked like a cross between Rocky and The Exorcist. I love that movie. When Linda Blair's character pukes that green stuff on that priest, yeah, that's the best part. Anyways, I stood there watching the fights. We're trained not to interfere, so I just stood there. After about 10 minutes, I couldn't stand the smell any longer and started to walk fast towards the front doors, trying not to hit or puke on in the process. I soon realized that I was walking in water. Ah man, I just paid $80 for these shoes, I thought. Anyways, you see what I did there? You thought that I was going to say, anyway. Gotcha. But seriously, I looked down. It wasn't just water. It was this nasty brown slimy liquid with chunks of sludge and what looked like, well, crap to be honest. And it was. It was literally that. That must be where the smell is coming from. The sewage pipes must have burst, and now it's seeping up through the floors. I raised my head to see it quickly rise up through the tiles. All the fighting stopped as customers and employees realized what was happening and started screaming and running to the front door. They began slipping and falling in all the mess. They were covered in sludge and slime. You can call me a sick person if you want to, but I thought that it was hilarious. Suddenly we heard a low rumbling that intensified with every second that passed. The floor began to shake, violently, knocking over the bookcases and causing them to fall like dominoes, crushing the people that were in the aisles. A loud bang could be heard as the floor burst open, under what was the aisle 6, sending this foul brown liquid gushing into the air like a water fountain and pieces of broken shelves flying through the air like torpedoes. One guy got hit with a chunk of wood right between the eyes. He kind of looked like a unicorn. Yes, it was raining, and you know what it was, soaking everyone and everything in sight. Anyways, myself and a few others finally made it out of the front door, completely soaked. Mr. Barnaby was the last one out. He said a captain never leaves his crew behind. The cops, the EMTs, the coroner, and the hazardous waste team were just arriving. At the same time, which was pretty odd. They had to wait until the fountain died down to enter the building. The sewage was coming out from under the front door and out into the street. The hazardous waste team began pushing it back with large brooms. They made everyone that survived take one of those chemical killing shower things. I think they're called decon showers. I'm not really sure. The cops taped off the area as the EMTs tended to the injured. The hazardous waste team suited up in their hazmat suits and went inside to look for survivors. There really weren't any. The hazmat team started carrying out bodies in special hazardous waste body bags. There were 9 of them. The coroner loaded up the bodies and left. So did the EMTs. The cops took our statements and started their investigation. Mr. Barnaby, myself, and a few employees and customers hung around to see them clean it up. The hazmat team called in their tanker truck to suck up all the sewage. They had this long hose-like thing connected to the truck. One guy was in charge of walking around in his suit and sucking it all up. Man, they couldn't pay me enough to do that. They get it all cleaned, then begin to rip out everything within the store that come in contact with that mess, which was every single thing. The floors, the walls, the ceilings, all the cases, the bookshelves, everything, down to the frame. Everything was completely gutted. All the packaged foods and fresh produce were thrown away. The canned goods were donated to the local food bank. We had to take the labels off, of course, and write on the can, in black Sharpie, what it was. It took 4 days to complete everything. My brother-in-law, Chris, is a plumber. Mr. Barnaby hired him to fix the pipes. He did it for free and made me help him. That was disgusting. Chris found 2 reasons why the pipes got clogged and caused the eruption. One, when McIntosh Brothers rebuilt this place, they used 3-inch pipe instead of continuing to use 6-inch pipe that was used in the original build. They put the 2 pipes together using 6x3 coupling, just to save money. The idiots. 2, there were about 20 human fingers, toes, and ears stuck at the base of the coupling, like someone had cut them off and flushed them down the toilet to get rid of evidence. Maybe. I wonder who that could have been. Yeah, right. Anyways, before I forget, the Mac and Cheese brothers were busted by the feds just out of sight of Brooklyn with 10,000 pounds of supplies in the trunk of their car. They're now serving 25 to life in federal prison. I bet "say hello to my little friend" has a whole new meaning for them now. Mr. Barnaby started a donation fund to help raise the money to rebuild the store. We already have close to $50,000 already raised. Oh yeah, the DJ we had covering the re-grand opening did a live play-by-play as it all went down. He got promoted to the big league station in Cincinnati because of it. Bet you can't guess which one. Anyways, the station manager just called me, and guess who is replacing him? That's right, me. I start tomorrow. So this is Mike on the mic, signing off. In closing, I would like to remind you that 2 wrongs do not make a right, but 3 rights does make a left. Think about it. Good night, everybody. Can I try a slice of that? If I had a nickel for every time that I've been asked that question, I could buy my own deli and be my own boss. Anyways, how are you doing? I'm Milani. I'm the new deli manager here at Barnaby's. I've been here for about a week now. I called that 1-800 number that Zeke mentioned in one of his posts, but that's a different story. Anyways, I came in for an interview and Mr. Barnaby hired me on the spot, just like that. I guess he liked my resume. You see, I've been working in delis all up and down the East Coast since I was 17. That's all I know. This is my first time at being a manager, though, let alone in a supermarket. This is on a much bigger level. We have a full-size deli, as well as a bakery, a hot bar, and a cake-making station that I'm responsible for. We also fry some chicken. I didn't know this until I got hired here, but Barnaby's is very old. We still have one of those old chicken fryers where you actually have to drop the chicken into the vat, then pull it out with tongs when it floats to the top. There's no basket, no temperature control. You just turn it on and hope that it doesn't explode. Anyways, it's going to be a challenge because I've always worked a little mom and pop shops before this. For those of you that don't know what a mom and pop shop is, it's a small business. Usually one establishment owned by an older couple. Usually. So far, the people that shop here are friendly. Although you do get that one customer every now and then that makes you want to say bad words. Sometimes you even make up a few. Anyway, I heard from a couple night crew guys that Mr. Barnaby is looking for stories about weird and horrible events that have happened here. He was off the day that this happened. Anyways, a couple days ago, I arrived to work about 6:55 a.m., punched in, did my morning paperwork, then headed to the department. I turned on the lights, put the slicer back together, and started the ovens. I saw a note on the board from the closer saying that there was an order for 16-piece chicken meal to be picked up by noon. Okay, no problem. Other deli associates started arriving as scheduled, and we opened the deli at 8. Everything was going good. Around 10 o'clock, I turned on the fryer so that it would heat up, hit the exhaust fan, and continued to wait on customers. About 20 minutes went by. The fryer started making a strange buzzing sound and shaking a little. I looked over to see that the grease was boiling, like a pan of water on a stove. I yelled over to Tommy, my assistant, to turn off the fryer and unplug it. Now, as I said, it's a very old fryer. The controls are on the back panel, not on front like the new ones. Anyways, he reached over the fryer vat to turn it off, and as soon as he did, the grease exploded upwards, directly into his face. He screamed and grabbed his face, stepping backwards, knocking over an empty cooling rack, and falling to the floor. I've never heard anyone scream like that before. It was horrifying. Anyways, hot grease was dripping off the fan and the ceiling, which started melting from the extreme temperatures. Tommy stopped screaming. Pieces of ceiling tile started falling to the floor and on top of Tommy, who was passed out from the pain at this point. At least that's what I thought. And the smell. Oh my God, did it smell. It smelled like burnt flesh and chicken. The customers just stood there watching and taking pictures. Those freaks. Anyways, I ran over to him. Now, I probably shouldn't have done this, but I grabbed his wrists and moved his hands away from his face. His skin was melted altogether and looked like string cheese as I pulled them apart. I turned my head and threw up right on the tray of cherry turnovers. I glazed them up real good. I'm never eating cheese again, that's for sure. Anyways, blood was pouring everywhere. Pieces of flesh started falling off of his face, as well as burnt muscle and tissue, exposing his skeletal bones. His eyes completely burned away. I knew I was wrong. He wasn't passed out. He was dead. One of the other associates ran and called the cops. They showed up and shut the store down. The sheriffs didn't respond. That's a different story, though. Anyways, the coroner arrived, put Tommy in a bag, and took him away. I couldn't stop crying. I'm starting to tear up right now as we speak. Anyway, the deli's been shut down now for the last 2 days, while the forensic team processes the scene. They say that it should be open again by tomorrow. Anyways, I haven't been able to sleep the last couple of nights because of nightmares. I called a therapist. I'm sitting in her waiting room right now, writing this, waiting to be seen. Oh yeah, by the way, the customer that ordered that chicken meal, they called as we were all leaving. The order was canceled. You scream, I scream, we all scream for, well, you know the rest. Hey, what's up? I'm Tommy. No, not the same Tommy from the deli. Totally different Tommy. Anyways, I work ice cream here at Barnaby's. It's only part-time, but some time is better than no time, right? Besides, I'm going to college to be a nurse. Yeah, that's right, a nurse. Don't judge. It's a noble profession. At least that's what my mother tells me. Anyways, I've been here for about 1.5 years now. It's pretty cool. Get it? Cool. Ice cream? Never mind. I'm bad at telling jokes. I moved out of the LA a few years back and tried my hand at stand-up. Yeah, I ended up doing sit-down. Forget it, I'm done. Anyways, I was sitting at home the other night, bored out of my mind, searching Reddit. I came across all these stories in a set called Barnaby's, an old grocery store. Anyways, I got to thinking, hey, I work at that place. I know a guy named Stuart and a guy named Steven. I remember when Zeke went running through the store with Stephanie. Well, Mr. Barnaby's collection stories I didn't know anything about. Man, nobody ever tells me anything, I swear. I checked this out. I'll turn this into the boss tomorrow. It was last June, the dead of summer. It was hot as hell. It was so hot that Satan called and wanted to borrow some of our heat. Yeah, I tried. Anyways, it was 9 o'clock in the morning. We just got our ice cream delivery. Stuart unloaded it and put it in the ice cream box. That's what we call the freezer. A box. Now, if you're reading all of these stories, like I have, then you know that Barnaby's is a very old store. We still get our ice cream in pallet igloos. For those of you that don't know what a pallet igloo is, it's a large blue insulated box that's mounted on top of a pallet. Some have doors on them, others have thick pieces of plastic hanging down. It helps to keep the ice cream frozen. It kind of resembles one of those porta potties like you would see at an outdoor rock concert. I love rock music. Nickelback rules. Anyways, I grabbed a couple carts and started unloading the igloos. There were 3 of them. I unloaded the first one onto 2 separate carts, took them to the sales floor, and worked them on the shelf. I put all my back stock away. That's all the freight that I couldn't carry on the shelf. We store it in an ice cream box in case we need it later. Anyways, I started unloading the second one. I got about halfway down and saw what looked like a little piece of ice in the back of the box. I didn't think much about it. It's just a freezer, so there's going to be ice, right? Anyways, I moved the next layer of ice cream and discovered what I thought was ice. It was really a fingertip connected to a hand. What the fuck? Curiosity had taken over. I started flinging ice cream out of the box. Now, I like to think myself as a pretty tough guy. I can handle anything, nerves of steel and all that. But what I found in the back of that box made me scream like a little girl. It was a dead body. A frozen dead body. Better yet, a frozen, decapitated, mutilated dead body. There are frozen arms, legs, hands, feet, a head, all of it, all thrown into the back of that box. The blood was mixed with the ice and settled in the bottom of the box. There were ice crystals formed on the parts, which were all frozen together. It looked like a sick game of Twister. It was horrifying. I just stood there, frozen in shock. No pun intended. I didn't even notice that Marcus had walked into the back room till he started vomiting all over the place, repeatedly, breaking me out of my trance. Thank God that none of the customers had saw it. These weirdos would have probably took selfies with the body. Sickos. Anyways, I ran into the break room, called 911 from the payphone. Old store, remember? Marcus went to the bathroom to clean himself up. Anyways, the cops, the coroner, and the forensic team had shown up. It looked like a scene out of CSI Miami. Anyways, the cops took our statements, while the forensic team used little space heaters from aisle 9 and a hammer and chisel to break apart the pieces. As the ice started melting, the pieces started falling out of the box, half frozen, bloody water spilling all over the floor, mixing with the melted ice cream. Stevens had one hell of a mess to clean up. Anyways, the head fell out of the box and almost rolled through the double doors onto the sales floor. I yelled, "Heads up!" Sorry, I can't help myself. Anyways, the forensic team finished thawing out the pieces and arranged them accordingly to the back room floor. They were all there. The skin was all clammy and wrinkled. The meat hanging off of them looked like soggy ground beef. I got the sudden craving for hamburger. Anyways, it was intense. It smelt like Satan's butt crack. To be honest, this is what made me decide to become a nurse, because after the initial shock, this was quite interesting. The coroner put them in bags, loaded up the truck, and left. The forensic team left as well. The cops took the igloo as evidence. They had to open up one of the loading dock doors and load it into a flatbed tow truck. It fell over twice. Oh crap. It's that late already. I gotta go. I'm late for my class. See ya. We cannot be held responsible for damages caused by shopping carts. That's what the sign says above the cart corral in the middle of the parking lot. I love that sign. That means that I could hit stuff with the shopping carts. Nah, I'm just kidding. I would never do anything like that. Hi, my name is Jimmy. Nice to meet you. I'm the cart guy here at Barnaby's. There's a real name for my job, but I can't remember it. Anyways, I live in a beat-up mobile home in a trailer park not far from here, but that's not important. I've been at Barnaby's about 3 years now, doing the same thing every single day that I work. I don't mind though. I get to meet all kinds of interesting people and hear all kinds of interesting stories. Most people are nice, but sometimes you get the occasional butthead. Anyways, I found all kinds of cool stuff that people leave behind in the shopping carts. Wallets, purses, pacifiers, shoes, umbrellas. Hell, one time, someone even left their kid in a cart. How the hell do you forget your kid? Anyways, they came back a few minutes later, picked up the kid like it was no big deal. I just don't understand people. At all. They gave me $5 though, for watching the little guy. Don't tell Mr. Barnaby, because we're not allowed to accept tips. Anyways, all the important stuff that I always turn into the office. But the little stuff, I take home with me. I've got a huge collection in a big box in my closet, but that's not important either. I'm sure I'm not the first to tell you, Barnaby's is a very old store. Our shopping carts are still made of plastic, not metal like the new ones. They're all cracked and missing pieces. Somebody's going to hurt themselves one day, I know it. Anyways, I'm a huge animal lover. I love all animals. Dogs, cats, fish, birds, things like that. I'm not too big on bugs, though. Not too many people are. I volunteer at least 20 hours a week at the local ASPCA. Now for you that don't know what the ASPCA stands for, or even what it is, It stands for American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. It's an organization that helps neglected, mistreated, and abused animals, and has for over 150 years. Anyway, Mr. Barnaby said that he's looking for stories about horrible and weird events that's happened here. Well, this isn't weird or freaky or anything. It's just horrible. Anyways, it was last summer, the day after Tommy found that dead body in that ice cream thingy. But that's a different story. It was really hot that day. Now, I always keep a bottle of water in my back pocket to drink, so I don't get dehydrated and pass out. Anyways, it's around 3 p.m., the end of my shift. I was gathering my last run of carts when I saw a group of people standing over by an old beat-up Chevy. There was an older woman on her cell phone, a big burly trucker guy, and a young couple standing there looking inside the car. The woman was obviously upset, as she was yelling at the person on the other end of the call, then hung up on him. I went over to see what was going on, the curious guy that I am. What I saw in the backseat of the car got my blood boiling. I was mad as hell. It was a little dog, a little fuzzy dog, passed out in the back seat, his tongue hanging out of his mouth, and he was breathing really heavily. I knew that he wasn't going to make it, unless somebody did something. All the windows in the cars were rolled up, and the car was locked. It had to have been at least 120 degrees in there. What kind of moron does this to a dog? Everyone was just standing there, talking about what to do. I knew what I had to do. Bust the damn window out. Anyways, I took off my shirt, wrapped it around my fist, and punched right through the back driver's side window. The shirt really didn't help, though, as the glass cut my hand and wrist pretty good. There was blood dripping everywhere, but I really didn't care about that. I cleared the glass from around the window and reached in the car and grabbed the little guy. His body was limp. He was still breathing, though, so that was a good sign. His eyes were rolled back into his head, and he was whining a little bit. I knew that I had to act pretty fast. I laid him on the grass, as it was cooler than the concrete. I took the bottle of water out of my back pocket and dumped it, a little bit at a time, on top of him, rubbing it into his fur to bring his body temperature back down. After a minute or so, he started to come back to life. I picked him up and was holding him as he licked my face. Anyways, just then, I heard an angry voice come from behind me. "What did you do to my car?" The dog went from sweet and lovable to vicious and mean in 2 seconds flat. He was barking and growling, going pretty crazy. I turned around to see a guy, about mid-30s, wearing an old, dirty, nasty clothing. He looked like he hadn't bathed since Jesus walked the earth. And smell. Oh my God, did he smell. He smelled like old sweat, dirt, and feet. Anyway, without saying a word, the trucker guy just hauled off and punched the guy dead straight in his face, knocking him back a couple of steps. He was bent over, holding his face. The dog became calm at this point. As the guy stood up, I could see that his nose was completely broken. There was blood pouring out, all over his mouth, his chin, and his clothing. He took a step forward and swung at the trucker guy. I later found out that his name was Dave. Anyways, the guy threw a punch and missed. What happened next looked like something out of Monday Night Raw. I love wrestling, by the way. Anyway, Dave hit him in the chest, scooped him up, and body slammed him straight through the windshield of his own car. It was great. The guy just laid there, spread all over his front seat. Glass and blood was everywhere. Dave reached in, grabbed him by the shirt, and dragged him back out of the windshield, the broken glass cutting his arm and his legs. He was kicking and screaming and cursing. Dave, dragging him over to the back of his semi, opened the trailer door and punched him again, threw him into the trailer. He locked the door and shouted, "Now you're going to know what it feels like." The guy screamed and kicked on the trailer door for a few minutes, and then stopped. Dead silence. Dave reached into his shirt pocket, pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and then walked back to where we were all standing. The cops arrived about 20 minutes later and attempted to get our statements. They asked us what happened. We all just played stupid. I don't know, was the collective response. Dave walked over to let the guy out of the truck. As he did, the guy fell face first out of the trailer, landing hard on the concrete. He was bleeding, sweating, and gasping for air. He definitely deserved it. The cops took the dog the damaged car, and the guy laying on the ground. He then looked at us, smiled, put his notepad back into his pocket, and walked away. The paramedics showed up, tending to my hand, which wasn't that bad at all. Just a couple minor cuts. They tended to the guy. After the cops arrested him for cruelty to animals, they put him in the back of the ambulance. They accidentally, or on purpose, hit him in the head a couple of times at the top of the door frame. That was pretty hilarious. Anyways, they loaded him up and left. The cops left as well. Dave shook my hand, then hopped into his truck and rolled on. The lady and the couple got in their cars and left as well. I was left just standing there, holding the dog. Since it was the end of my shift, I carried the little guy inside, punched out for the day, and took him home with me. I introduced him to my other dog, Roscoe. Anyways, I decided to name him Enos. Get it? Roscoe and Enos? Dukes of Hazzard? Never mind, it's just an old TV show. They seem to get along just fine. They just hang out and play in my yard. Anyways, the cops from the other day came by the store a couple of weeks later. He said that the guy was found guilty of intentional animal cruelty, fined $5,000, and is now serving 3 years in prison. That definitely serves him right. His car still sits in the parking lot. The birds now use it for target practice, and they definitely don't miss. 10:15 in progress. Officers respond. We get that call at least once a week. There's always something going on at Barnaby's. My name is Reggie. I'm the town sheriff. I've been for the last 20-something years. Anyways, for those of you that don't know what a 10:15 means, that's the police code for civil disturbance. Now, first and foremost, Barnaby's is an old store. I remember my parents shopping there when I was a child, as their parents shopped there as well. Anyway, my officers and I have responded to many calls to that store, such as fights, freak accidents, alleged intruders, among other things. Over the years, I've become quite friendly with the owner, Pat. He must have excellent insurance to cover all the incidents that have happened here. He mentioned a while back about stories that he's collecting, so I thought I would throw mine into the mix. Now I've served as a Marine for a short period of time, before becoming a sheriff. As a Marine, I've seen my share of blood, guts, and death, both here in the U.S. as well as overseas. But nothing compares to what I encountered one early September morning at Barnaby's. The last time that I was there, before this, I ran into a guy that I went to high school with, Steven something. He found a bag of body parts, but that's a different story. Anyways, I was working the graveyard shift, which I volunteer to do at least once a month. This night just happened to be my night. It's a night that I will never forget. It was about 2 a.m. We had gotten a noise complaint from a civilian in the neighboring housing development. They reported the loud sound of metal to metal coming from Barnaby's. Dispatch announced the call. Here we go again, I said to myself. I notified dispatch that I would be handling the call, flipped on the red and blues, and made my way to the store. I radioed over to the other officer, working the shift with me, and told him to meet me at the store. I arrived first. I did a quick pass around the outside of the building, per protocol, and discovered one of the large metal loading dock doors moving up slowly, then dropping down fast, all on its own, creating the sound that was reported. I parked my car directly in front of them, my headlights shining on the door. The store was closed, so I knew no one should be in there. I informed dispatch that I was on scene and to stand by for further instructions, at which time the other officer pulled up beside me. We looked at each other. I gave him the ready, go signal, and we exited our vehicles. The moment we did, we both heard the sound of tom-tom drums. It seemed to be surrounding us. We drew our weapons and proceeded to walk towards the door. The sound was deafening. I'm sorry about all the details, but as a cop, details are very important. Anyways, we're about 5 feet away from the slamming doors. I announce, Sheriff's Department, come out with your hands up. No response. The drumming had stopped. Apparently the similar thing happened to Pat a few months back. Anyways, we reached the door and decided that we would have to jump and roll into the back room while the bay door was going up, calculating it just perfectly. I went first. I holstered my weapon. The door went up halfway. I jumped and rolled into the darkened back room, drawing my weapon once again. I motioned for the other officer to come in, a decision I would later regret. Unfortunately, he wasn't so lucky. The bay door went up, about halfway. The officer attempted his jump. Just as he landed on the concrete floor, the door slammed down with intense force, crushing his skull and his body underneath it. I knew that he was dead. He left behind a wife and a 4-year-old boy. I had to inform his wife. Anyway, I immediately contacted dispatch through my shoulder mic and called an officer down in need of assistance. Now in complete darkness, I drew out my flashlight, flicked it on so that I could see my surroundings. There was blood splattered all over a stack of pallets, a pallet jack, and the bay door. I said a prayer, then turned and walked slowly through the back room, shining my flashlight left and right. A few times I could have sworn I seen something move from the coolers. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream. The ground started to shake, and every light came on, flickering and buzzing in random patterns. Pallets started flying through the air. Another scream. A phantom wind came and blew me hard against the back wall. Various sorts of debris and cardboard began flying through air. Large pieces of machinery began levitating on their own. The drums began again, louder this time. 2-liter bottles of soda began levitating, then smashing forcefully to the ground, repeatedly. Large shelving began tumbling over, smashing its contents all over. The drumming continued. Every door began opening and then slamming shut. The office door, the cooler doors, even the loading dock doors, repeatedly slamming down on the officer's bloody, mutilated carcass. I screamed, closed my eyes, and unloaded my weapon. A full clip, blinding in any direction. I felt a fear that I've never felt before, not even in the war. I know that I'm going to die. I slid down the wall into a sitting position, opened my eyes, and saw a tomahawk appear out of thin air, whirling fast, coming directly at my head. I screamed once again, and then lost consciousness. I was told days later that members of the town fire department and coroner team found me, about 30 minutes later, shaking, sweating, and mumbling to myself. The entire back room in complete shambles. I don't remember them finding me at all. First thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed 2 days later. Doctor said that besides a few bumps and bruises, I was perfectly fine. I took a couple of days off to try to get my head straight. I still have nightmares sometimes. I don't respond to calls at Barnaby's anymore. Never again, and I never will. I'm not ashamed to say that place scares the bejesus out of me, and I'm a cop. I'm sitting in my patrol car, writing this at the donut shop across the street from the store. 10:15 in progress. Officers respond. No, thank you. Back in the late 70s, my parents and I moved into a neighborhood in a town 3 states away from the state that we lived in before. I was about 12 at the time. Our new house was big, 2-story, 3-bedroom house, much larger than our previous house. The neighborhood was small, but the backyards were huge. Plenty of room to play in. A few days after moving in, our new neighbors, the Robinsons, as well as their daughter Tanya, stopped by to say hello, welcomed us to the neighborhood, and informed my parents about a situation that had been occurring throughout the town. Tanya and I were sent upstairs, as that was adult talk and not to be heard by children. We secretly sat at the top of the stairs listening, as we all did as children. They told my parents was that there have been multiple children that have went missing over the past few years. Law officials were baffled by the situation and to keep a close eye on their son, me, just like they do with their daughter. Now let me tell you about Tanya. Tanya was a unique child, a year younger than me. She was quiet, slightly introverted, a little off, and totally infatuated with flowers. She had a giant flower bed in the Robinsons' backyard. It was full of all kinds of big, beautiful flowers. Occasionally, actually quite often, I could see her out of my bedroom window. As I was rocking out to the latest Kiss album, she would be playing Duck Duck Goose and other childhood games around the flower bed with some of the neighborhood children. Well, assume that they were the neighborhood, as I didn't get out much. It was never the same kids twice, though. Anyways, the funny thing about it was, after every time she had friends over, I could see her through the bedroom window, late at night, tending to her flowers, singing songs, and dancing around the flower bed. I chalked it up to her uniqueness at first. Then I started to notice that every morning after the visits, the flower bed got a little bit bigger, and soon after, another big flower appeared. I started to avoid Tanya at that point. Anyways, this went on for about a year and a half, until her flower bed practically consumed the whole backyard. I wanted to tell my parents, but I had no proof, and Tanya freaked me out a lot. Then one day, the Robinsons and Tanya just disappeared. Vanished. They left behind their car, all their belongings, and even the flower bed. The house sat vacant for a couple of years after that. All of Tanya's big, beautiful flowers survived for a couple of months, then died altogether. I kind of felt bad. I watered them a couple of times, but I really didn't know how to care for them, and I still don't. Anyways, I guess the town took over ownership of the property, eventually, because one day I came home from school and saw a moving truck, several police cars, and a pool installation vehicle in the driveway. Apparently someone bought the house and planned to put a pool in there where the flower bed was. A couple days later, newspaper articles revealed that the pool company began digging up the flower bed and discovered the skeletal remains of an adult male, an adult female, and over 50 remains of small children, buried underneath the flower bed. The DNA later identified the remains of those David Robinson, adult male, Denise Robinson, adult female, and many of the children reported missing over the last 5 years. Tanya was never found, nor was she ever seen again. Well, my last statement isn't actually true. My name is Donovan Mitchell. I'm a longtime customer here at Barnaby's. I've been shopping here for years. Let me tell you, Barnaby's is a very, very old store. I love it here. The prices are good, and you get a nostalgic feeling just walking through the door. Not to brag or anything, but I just celebrated my 22nd anniversary with my wife, Jillian, a couple of days ago. I overheard a couple of the workers talking about strange and unusual things that have happened here, and that the owner is looking for stories about such things. I don't know if this fits into that category. Hell, I don't even know if I'm going to give it to him. What do you think? Anyways, I woke up a couple days ago, found my honey-do list sitting in the counter on the kitchen. It's my day off, and my wife had to be at work at 8. So I got to run errands. For those of you that don't know what a honey-do list is, it's a list that's usually given to a man by his wife, his girlfriend, or significant other, whatever the case may be, of certain things that need to be completed during that day. Anyways, I got my list, drank my coffee, drank more coffee, then decided to get started. The list wasn't that big. It shouldn't take me very long. Or at least I thought. Maybe an hour or two. I'd still have plenty of time to catch the highlights of the Eagles game last night. Anyways, I changed the light bulb on the porch, mailed Aunt Betty's birthday present, and unclogged the drain in the bathroom. For as much hair as I pulled out of the drain, my wife should be bald by now. Anyway, I completed my list, except for one thing. Pick up a few things from the grocery store. I thought, what better place to go than Barnaby's? So I hopped in the car and headed over there. With my list in my hand, I started to gather the items. Eggs, bread, milk, among other things. I couldn't get the lunch meat because the deli was closed due to an incident that happened yesterday. Being that my anniversary was the next day, I decided to pick up a vase of roses while I shopped instead of going to the florist and paying some astronomical price. I figured that I'd go over there real quick and get what I needed, pay for my stuff, and be home in plenty of time to watch the highlights. So I went to the floral section, found the roses, and was standing there deciding which one to choose. When out of the blue, I heard a female voice from behind me. Say, "Welcome to Barnaby's. I'm new here. How may I help you?" I turned around to see a middle-aged woman about 5'3", a little on the chubby side, long black hair, and glasses. She looked vaguely familiar. It didn't hit me until I looked at her name tag. It read Tanya. Fresh from the field. That's our slogan here in produce. I'm Zeke, short for Ezekiel. I'm the assistant manager at Barnaby's. Yeah, I know. It sounds like an Amish name, right? Well, it is. I was raised Amish until my 16th birthday. When Rumspringa began, and when it was over, I decided to stay. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's a period of time in which Amish teenagers, usually between the ages of 14 to 21, depending on the community, are allowed to act like the English normal people, so to speak. They're allowed to ride in cars, listen to music, drink, smoke, have sex, anything the English can do. Then on their 18th or 21st birthday, again depending on the community, decide whether they want to live amongst the English for the rest of their lives or return to their Amish ways. Anyways, as I said, I chose to stay. Being that I was raised Amish and know a lot about farming, fruits and vegetables, and things of that sort, this is the perfect job for me, and I love it. One thing though, Barnaby's is a very old store. We still get all of our fruits and vegetables from local growers. Our customers seem to just love it. Anyways, I like my job and the people here, but there's something off about this place. It scares the crap out of me, sometimes. I've heard all of the stories. The fight over the turkey, the Indian burial ground thing, the incident with the Pepsi truck. I love Pepsi, by the way. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go get a Pepsi now. Hold on a second. Damn. All out of Pepsi. All I wanted was a Pepsi. Yeah, most of you won't get that reference, but it's okay though. Some of you will. Anyway, my job includes ordering, price changes, setting up displays, anything that the manager can do, simply because when she's not here, someone has to do it. All produce associates are responsible for filling the department, cleaning the shelves, baling the cardboard, and making bales, which leads me to my story. It was the end of March, 2013, right before Easter. We were busy as hell. People were buying everything. We were putting out product left and right, which created a lot of cardboard to be baled. In case you haven't noticed, I like to talk. Anyways, I needed a break from all the craziness after some old lady in one of those riding shopping cart things. I think they call it a mart cart or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, she slammed that thing right into our giant diamond nut display, knocking it over, spilling over 40 pounds of loose nuts all over the place. It was a nut-tastrophe. We just walked away. I went to the prep room, grabbed the cart of cardboard, and took it to the back room to bale it. The baler was full, like usual, so I had to make a bale. Now the baler is a very dangerous piece of equipment. It's basically a large hydraulic press. You throw the cardboard into the chamber below, close the safety gate, hit the down button, and a large metal press comes down and crushes the cardboard. When the chamber is full, you have to empty it, hence the phrase, make a bale. I saw the QA guy, Steven, roaming around back there. I asked him to give me a hand. He didn't think that it was funny, but that's a different story. Anyway, he agreed and grabbed a pallet to put the bale on. I grabbed the baling wire and started to wrap it around the bale. Now, baling wire is a very thin piece of wire and have been known to break. We finished wrapping the bale, put the pallet in place, closed the gate, hooked up the chains so that the bale would eject, and hit the up button. Stephen and I stepped to the side. Anyone who has worked in the grocery business for more than a week knows to stay clear of a bale being made. Well, apparently no one told Stephanie, the deli manager. She walked by just as the bale was ejecting. One of the wires snapped, came flying back, fast, and hit her directly on the side of her face, right over her left eye, and slicing her diagonally across her face. She fell to the ground, screaming, and grabbed her face, blood pouring out of her fingers. Stephen and I ran to go help her. Now I've seen many incidents like this, when I was growing up at least, so it didn't faze me. But to add to insult and to injury, Stephen thrown up, on Stephanie's lap. That's gross. Anyway, I had moved her hands. It was a bloody mess, like something from a bad 80s horror movie. Her eye was hanging out of its socket, her nose ripped completely off as well as her right cheek. The left side of her face was hanging down, exposing tissue, bone, and the empty eye socket. Most of her teeth were knocked out. She was screaming frantically, kicking her legs all around. She nailed Stephen right in his man parts. I snickered a little bit. He was useless at that point. Anyway, she started gasping for air. Her one eye rolled back into her head, and she passed out. Blood was gushing everywhere. I thought that she was dead. I picked her up and ran out of the back room, through the store and up to the front, completely covered in blood. I laid her on the conveyor belt. Thank God it didn't move, and I called for an ambulance. Customers and employees were screaming and puking. Some even had fainted. I saw some goth chick standing on the side, videotaping on her phone. Kids these days. Anyways, the ambulance had shown up, made sure that she was still alive. I didn't see how, after losing all of that blood, but she was. They put the left side of her face back in place, as well as her eye, then wrapped her entire head in gauze. She looked kind of like a mummy. They loaded her into the ambulance. Stephen came staggering out shortly after. Pat made him clean up the mess. He wasn't too happy about that. I heard that she's doing okay now. She quit right after that, and I really don't blame her. We've had a couple of deli managers since, but they didn't last too long, with all that has happened here. We're looking for one now as we speak. 12 items or less. The express lane. That's where they stick all the newbies, like me. My name is Marcus. I just got hired here at Barnaby's as a cashier about a week ago. Places like this always hire seasonal help for the holidays, like now, being that it's Christmas and all. I was hoping that they would keep me on after the holidays, but after what happened today, I don't know if I'm going to want to come back. I just finished my training yesterday, and today was my first day going solo. I was excited, being this was my first job. I just couldn't wait. The day started out pretty good. I arrived to work early, like my dad always said to do. It makes a good impression, he said. I clocked in, got my till. For those of you that don't know what a till is, it's that little black box that holds the money in the register. We have to get a fresh till at the beginning of our shift. By fresh, I mean $120 in coins and bills. Anyways, I walked over to the register, opened up the drawer, put in my till. I closed the drawer, announced the register was open, and began to ring up my customers. Now Barnaby's is a very old store. We still have push-button cash registers. All the big-name stores have UPC laser scan machines, but not us. We still have to hand key in the prices of a price sticker. We do have a conveyor belt system, though. It looks like some kind of torture device, with sharp, jagged metal claws at the end, like an escalator has, and the sensors that stop the belts. Only works when they want to, though. Anyways, it was about 2 hours into my shift. A middle-aged lady, wearing red pants and a green sweater with a white button-up shirt underneath, and what appeared to be a strand of miniature Christmas lights around her neck like a necklace, dangling down almost to the top of her pants, walking into my line. I greeted her with a hello, as we are trained to do. She put her items on the belt. I rang up and told her the price. Then it happened. She bent over, handing me the money, her necklace hitting the conveyor belt. It started moving pretty fast. It caught her necklace and yanked her down, face first into the belt, and dragged her into the metal claws. It happened so quickly. She screamed as the claws tore open her face, blood spewing everywhere. She tried pulling herself free, but every time she did, the belt would pull her face back down into the claws. She was screaming, kicking, and thrashing her arms all around. Luckily, Jim, the meat manager, was behind her. He was involved in an accident last year, but that's a different story. Anyway, he whipped out his box cutter, cut the woman's necklace, freeing her completely. She fell back into his arms. Her face was all mangled. Her left cheek ripped completely off. Her left eye dangling out of its socket, blood pouring out of her face. I covered my mouth and forced the vomit back down my throat. There were pieces of flesh sticking out of the claw in the conveyor belt, blood on the belt and register and the floor. Not to mention, poor Jim, he was covered in blood as well. I was in shock. I've never seen anything like that before, only in horror movies. But this was real life. She started shaking and twitching, gasping for air. Then she just passed out. Her body went limp. I thought that she was dead. Several people vomited as well, and others had fainted. Someone was just standing there videotaping on their phone. What the hell is wrong with these people? People must have called the cops. They showed up and shut down the store. The paramedics arrived and tended to this woman. They made sure that she was still breathing, bandaged her up, and took her away. The cops took our statements and left. We were all sent home after that. I sat in my car for about 30 minutes, staring out the windshield, trying to pull myself together, to be able to just drive home. That was pretty fun. I told my dad what happened. He said that it was up to me if I want to go back or not. But then I thought about it. After hearing Jim's story the other day, this could be a pretty cool place to work. I'm definitely going back. I can't wait to see what happens tomorrow. Vendor at the back door. That's all I hear, all day long. Well, at least from 7 till 1. I'm Stuart. I'm the DSD receiver here at Barnaby's. I've been here for the last 15 years. For those of you that don't know what DSD stands for, it stands for Direct Store Delivery, which means that I'm in charge of receiving all product that's delivered to the store by outside companies, such as Tasty Cake, Frito-Lay, Little Debbie, and all the soda and bread companies, things like that. Also, any books and magazines that you may see in the store. As you may already know, Barnaby's is a very old store. We don't have any computers. Every bill invoice I get is physically checked in and verified by me, signed off by me, then filed away in a large file cabinet in the office. We hold them for a year, then send them up to the main office. Anyways, this place has a long history of weird and horrible events that has happened here. It was January, 2 years ago, a few days after New Year's. It had snowed the night before. Not bad, but it was bad enough. It was about 8:30 in the morning, I'd say. One of our bread vendors was pushing a bread rack down the ramp and out of his truck when he slipped and fell on the ice, slid down the ramp, bounced off the sidewall and right into the path of an 18-wheeler Pepsi truck backing up to the deck for delivery. The driver tried to stop, but his wheels locked and the whole truck slid on the ice as well. It was too late. He screamed right before the truck ran him over. I've never heard anyone scream like that before. It still gives me nightmares. The wheels of the truck crushed his skull, then ran over his body continuously as the truck slid down the incline and slammed into the loading dock doors. The right front passenger side tire stopped directly on the body. It was horrible. I threw up right there in the snow. There was blood and bones, pieces of flesh smashed down into the snow, on the tires of the truck and the bread rack. Severed body parts that looked like internal organs spread out all over the body. The worst part about it is that the truck had to run back over him to clear the crime scene, once the cops and the coroner got there. I used to wonder how they cleaned up automotive accidents such as this. Now I know. I'm sure that they have a proper name for it, but to me, it looked like a giant snow shovel. They scraped up the remains, put them in a body bag. They had to scrape it up about 3 or 4 times just to get all of him. There was blood dripping off of it, body parts hanging out of it. I almost puked once again. Now get this. They used 2-liter bottles of Coke to clean up the blood off the pavement. No, seriously. Coca-Cola. Look it up if you don't believe me. Anyways, isn't it ironic that they used Coke to clean up a crime scene involving a Pepsi truck? Sorry about that. Bad joke. Anyways, sometimes when I'm outside cleaning up where the truck pulls in, sweeping, picking up the trash, that kind of stuff, I swear that I can see him standing there, right where he died, staring at me. It always freaks me out. But that's not the only ghost that we have here. The owner, Pat, has seen a few Native American ghosts around the store, but that's a different story. Anyway, the driver of the truck was not charged with anything, as it was clearly an accident. The cops impounded the truck as evidence, took witness statements, and then left. The coroner left as soon as he finished removing the remains. I don't know where the driver went. I went home sick, obviously. I just couldn't do it anymore. Hell, I'm getting nauseous just thinking about it. I'll never forget that day for as long as I live. And I haven't used a snow shovel since then. Clean up in aisle 12. Yeah, I'll never forget that day. But that's a different story. Hey there, I'm Steven. I'm the QA here at Barnaby's. For those of you that don't know what QA means, it's short for quality assurance. Yeah, it's just a glorified name for janitor. Now you have to understand that Barnaby's is a very old store. We don't have one of those big fancy floor scrubber machines like the big name stores do. No, I gotta carry a 10-gallon pickle bucket from the deli around all day, filled with Windex, paper towels, and other cleaning supplies and tools. Then fill the same bucket up with hot soapy water, with one of those mop squeezing things, if I have to mop the floors, that is. I don't really mind though, it's easy money. Anyway, I have been here for about 3 years now, and I love it. There's never a dull moment around this place. With all that I have seen, and the stories that I've heard, hell, I can't wait to come back to work. Anyways, as the only QA, my job includes sweeping, mopping the floors, getting carts, cleaning the bathrooms. Oh yeah, by the way, you people are nasty, okay? I sure hope that your bathrooms at homes don't look like that. It's pretty shameful. Anyways, another one of the jobs is taking out the trash. Speaking of trash, I have to get a story to tell you. Have you noticed that one of my favorite words is anyway? So anyway, just last week, around 10:30 in the morning, I just get done cleaning those nasty bathrooms and begin to gather the trash. I went outside to check the can out there. It was full as usual. I realized that I hadn't brought out any trash bags, so I went back in to go get some. Also bring out a cart to carry the bags in. When I come back out, I saw a large lawn and leaf bag sitting next to the trash can. I went over to it, tried to pick it up and put it into the cart. This thing was super heavy. Anyways, I saw my buddy Stuart, the DSD receiver. Yeah, he was out having a smoke. He doesn't drink Coke anymore. Don't ask him why. Anyways, I called him over to help lift it. He agreed, and together we tried. The first attempt, we moved it a little. We dig down deep and gave it everything that we had. The next attempt, we lifted it up and off the ground, and then the bottom fell out. Now I don't think anyone could ever be prepared for what we saw come out of that bag. Human body parts. Better yet, fresh human body parts. I'm not talking one or two. I'm talking 30, 40, maybe even more. There were arms, legs, hands, feet, and skulls. Different sizes, different colors. There was blood, pieces of bones, chunks of flesh, all covered by this white gooey looking stuff. The maggots were just having a feast. And smell? Oh my God, it did smell. It was pretty disgusting. Stuart and I both throw up on the pile. The customers stopped coming at this point. Anyways, I pulled out my cell phone. I dialed 911. They said that they would send someone out, and the coroner. Stuart heard the word coroner and went inside. He's still traumatized, but that's a different story. A forensic team showed up about 30 minutes later, took pictures, separated the body parts, and none of them had matched. I watched this whole thing. It was cool as shit. Anyway, the coroner shows up, put each body part in a separate evidence bag, and numbered each one, loaded them in the van, and then left. I counted them. The forensic team finished up, cleaned up the crime scene, and left. By the way, there was 52 bags. It gives a whole new meaning to the word 52 pickup, anyway. Spend 100 or more and get a free 20-pound or less frozen turkey while supplies last. That was the promotion that our store ran every Thanksgiving for the last 17 years. Well, for as long as I've been here, that is. Not this year. This year we're not running that promotion. I really don't blame them after what happened last year. Let me tell you what happened. First all, my name is Jim. I'm the meat manager here at Barnaby's. I saw the whole thing. It was 2 days before Thanksgiving. I was working the morning shift, like I always do. It was around 11 o'clock, I'd say. We just received our truck, but unfortunately, the turkeys we ordered were out of stock from the warehouse. For those of you that don't know what that means, it means that the warehouse didn't have anything to send us. Shit, this isn't good, I said to myself. I went to the case to see how many we actually had left. All we had was one lone turkey. Fuck. Then it happened. From opposite end of the aisle came 2 women. One, an older Asian woman, and 2, a younger blonde Barbie wannabe. They both arrived at this case at the same time. I informed them that this was the last turkey we had due to the warehouse issue. Their eyes widened with fear and shock as they both turned to the freezer case. The Asian woman grabbed the door, flung it open, hitting Barbie in the face, and knocking her back. Barbie screamed like some kind of demon, charged, and grabbed the Asian woman by the hair, spinning her around, and slamming her head first into the adjacent glass freezer case door, nearly missing a small child that stood with her mother in the aisle. She grabbed her kid, and then ran. Now, Barnaby's is a very old store. We still have actual glass freezer doors. Anyways, a few seconds went by, and the Asian woman crawled out of the case and turned. Pieces of glass were stuck into her face, arms, and her neck. She was bleeding like a pig. She pulled the rather large piece of glass from her neck, holding it in her hand, blood dripping everywhere. She tried covering the wound with her other hand, but blood was just gushing out from between her fingers. I swear to God, I almost puked all over myself. Anyway, she screamed and charged Barbie as she was lifting the turkey out of the case. She drove that piece of glass directly into Barbie's heart, knocking back against the freezer case door. Barbie coughed up blood and spewed it right in the Asian's face as she screamed in pain. Then, in slow motion, both fell to the floor, as well as the turkey, which rolled halfway down the aisle, blood being everywhere. People screaming and running. One guy tried to jump over them, but slipped in the blood and face-planted right into an abandoned shopping cart. I'm sorry, but that was pretty funny. He was okay, though. He got up and staggered away. We are trained not to interfere with robbers, shoplifters, and even fights such as this, so I just stood there. I guess one of the customers, who wasn't videotaping on their phone, or a manager or someone called the cops. They showed up and closed the store down. The paramedics showed up, did their thing as the employees, including myself, moved any customers up to the front for checkout. As I walked back through the door to make sure that there was no more customers, I saw the paramedics covering the bodies with white sheets. They died, right there in aisle 12. I saw the turkey still lying there on the floor, still frozen. I picked it up, as I needed one myself. I took it to the front, paid for it, gave the cops my statement, and brought it home to my family. My wife cooked it up, and we had an amazing Thanksgiving dinner. The best part was the turkey, though. Yeah, that thing was to die for. Good morning. Welcome to Barnaby's. I've been saying that for the last 35 years. Hi, I'm Pat. Pat Barnaby. I am the owner of this place. I've seen some really strange and horrible things happen here. But before I get into that, let me give you a little bit of background on this place. Barnaby's is a very old store. It's been in my family for many generations, going all the way back to my great-great-grandfather back in 1929. He built this place. I try to keep it as original as possible, with a few upgrades to keep up with the times. Anyway, I've been told by various family members that he won this piece of land in a poker game. They say that he won with aces and eights, the dead man's hand. For those of you that don't know why they call it the dead man's hand, that's the poker hand that frontier lawman Wild Bill Hickok was said to have holding when he was shot from behind and killed by Jack McCall. Anyways, I don't know about poker game stories. But what I do know, through research, is that this piece of land was once occupied by Native Americans and used as a burial ground. Some say that this land is even cursed. That would explain everything. I didn't really believe in such things, but I do now. Anyways, I've asked all my employees, past and present, to write down any horrible events or strange occurrences that they have witnessed, in story form, and turn them into me. I've got a couple so far, so I thought that I'd write my own. This is why I started my research. It was about 4:30 in the morning, about 2 weeks ago. I was home in bed, asleep. I got a call from our alarm company. They said that the motion detectors at our store were going off. So I got up, got dressed, and headed to the store. As soon as I pulled in, something felt off. I blew it off and parked the car. I got out and immediately heard the sound of Indian war cries off in the distance. It's got to be the wind or something, I thought. I started walking to the store. The cries got louder and closer. I started hearing the sounds of galloping horses along with the war cries. I started freaking out. I ran the rest of the way to the store, keys in my hand. The sounds were right behind me now. I got to the door, put the key into the lock. As soon as I did, the sounds had stopped. Dead silence. Just then, 2 police cars pull up. The alarm company apparently called them as well. They went into the store and did a walkthrough to make sure that no one was in there. I went in, turned off the alarm, then waited outside for them to finish. They came out about 20 minutes later, said everything was clear, and left. It was about 5:30 at this point, so I figured that I might as well stay here, since the store opens at 7. There's no sense in going home just to turn around and come back an hour later, right? So I caught up on some paperwork, straightened up some displays, and opened the store at 7. Nothing really eventful happened that day. I got that uneasy feeling a couple of times, and I kept seeing out of the corner of my eye what looked like Native Americans standing in the aisle, in the bathroom, even at the registers. But that was it. I left around 1:30, got to my car, and saw something that chilled me to the bone. A rock, in the shape of an arrowhead, was sitting in the passenger seat of my car. How the hell did that get there? I know my car was locked. I was afraid to even touch it, so I just left it there. I drove home trying not to look at it, but I couldn't help myself. It was like it was calling me. I got home and put it on my mantle over my fireplace. The next day, it was in my upstairs bathroom. The day after, my dining room. It showed up in a different room in the house every day since. I'm afraid to get rid of it, because I don't know what will happen. Last night I dreamt that there was a Native American standing at the foot of my bed. Today I woke up with that arrowhead sitting on my chest.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.